call this meeting to order. Today is August 6th. It's our 5:30 work meeting. We appreciate everybody that's here. And I'd like to start out, as our usual, with any type of reports from our council members. So, anybody want to start out? Anybody have any reports?
Okay, I guess I'll start out. So our Communities That Cares, Davis Behavioral Health has written a grant for 2 grants to gain funding for the operations of a coalition coordinator for the 2 CTC cones, one out of Northridge High and the other out of Layton High School. They did, key community members have been interviewed for the community readiness assessment survey that was done. And we have a core work group meeting scheduled, a Zoom meeting for next Wednesday, August 12th. We're moving along at a rate that they're hoping that we can have our key leader orientation in November. So I think that's really good. And then I'm going to mention this one in both meetings, but the census has started door to door. And so for people who haven't responded online, they will be coming with ID and they'll be masked, and also try to do the 6 feet distancing when they approach someone's door. The deadline for the census has been set at September 30th, and there had been a request for it to be extended to October 31st, but Congress hasn't acted on the extension at this point. So for right now, it appears that it's going to need to be done by September 30th. So we really need to encourage anybody that hasn't completed it online to get that done. And I'll mention that again in the public meeting.
Okay. Any other council members have a report? Nope. Okay. Well, then we'll just jump right into our presentation on our victim services with Karen Aurora and Finley, right? Yeah, wait, step up to the mic so that we can, and one thing about it, since we're recording, if you could kind of speak into the mic real closely so that they can pick up on it. Speak loudly.
Okay, I'll pass these down. Thanks for having me. Can you pass that down, Dave? Sure. Most of you are probably already familiar with our presentations, but I am primarily funded by a VOCA grant. VOCA stands for the Victims of Crime Act. So they pay a large portion of my salary, as well as Alex Smith, she's our part-time advocate, and then they pay for Kelly Rushton, our housing victim advocate. And this year we've got a few new things going on. So it's one of our grant requirements that we present to the council once to twice a year, just to give you guys an update. So I'll just kind of run through this handout that I made to just give you kind of a summary. But our victim services grant was awarded $68,400. Our housing grant was awarded $123,700, and this is for the 2021 grant year. And then our goals and objectives are mainly the same on our victim services grant, but our housing grant has some different services that we haven't been able to pay in the past. So I want to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about some of the things we've done with our housing services. But we can help pay for rent for victims of crime for a few months, and then we can also help with direct emergency aids. So we've gotten to do some interesting things. Here's an example of a direct aid. We had a victim that was able to secure a pretty good job, making $15 or $16 an hour, but it was at Americold, and they hired from a temp agency. Until a person became a permanent worker, they didn't get any of the equipment, and they had some rental stuff there, but nothing that fit this person. So this young woman, who is a victim of domestic violence, her offender went to jail for felony assault, multiple protective order violations, continual harassment. She got this job. She was a single mom needing to take care of her 4 kids, and she was suffering at work. She was going and putting those little heat things in her shoes so that she could not freeze, and it just wasn't working. So they had some boots at a place that she could purchase them for those specific type of sub-zero work boots. They were like $280. So our grant approved for us to purchase those for her. We've talked to her recently. She's still working there. She's doing well. She's supporting her kids. Their father's in jail, and she's self-sufficient. We actually never had to pay rent for her because she was able to with her income. give you some general statistics, these are stats on the calendar year. So last year, from January to December, we had 1,165 new victims that we served from that time frame. 728 of those were domestic violence victims, 62 were stalking, 52 were assault. So in totality, around 68% of the people that we served were domestic violence or stalking victims. But I would say that they probably comprise, 95% of what we do, right, Gary? So it's definitely the most time-consuming part, but it's been good having the new program with us. It's enabled some victims to stay in their home where they would have had to leave until they get approved for some of the financial assistance through the state. We've been seeing a big increase in the last couple of months, especially because of some of the struggles people are facing with COVID. To give you an example of our spending with the grant money, and the housing program is 100% FOCA funded right now. So the match that the city's using is the part of my salary that's paid for by the city for the victim services program. Big friendly for me?
Yes.
Thanks, Gary.
We'll take her around to visit
That would be
everybody
great.
as you're talking.
And I'll talk a little bit about Finley too. The housing program, we started it last year, but it took us a while to get it going. So we spent nothing the first quarter, the second quarter just under 3,000, the third quarter just under 10, and then the fourth quarter 15. This year we've already spent close to 15 and we're only a month in.
Wow.
So there's a really high need for it. There is a possibility we can ask for additional funding from our grant source if we run out. Otherwise, we're going to have to put a cap from month to month to determine what we can do. So, but if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. A little bit of information on Finley. Finley was donated from Underworld Kennels Dog Training. Raylene Penman is the trainer. She used to be a lieutenant in Salt Lake. And as she's retired, she's devoted her life to training dogs. She trains police dogs, comfort dogs, anxiety dogs, hunting. They do all kinds of different services at her agency. So she donated the dog to our program. She wants to raise awareness of what these dogs can do. These dogs are trained to not react to much stimulus, so you can have a train driving by or cats walk in and they just kind of look at them. But basically her job is to be loved and pet, and she's really good at it. She's still a puppy. She's only 6 months. She's still in training, but we've exposed her to some kids here, and she helped on a protective order today. She's doing a good job so far.
Cost
Yeah.
of training one of these dogs is about $30,000. But if you take the collar off, she's like any other pup. She just goes nuts. But she's really a great benefit. These dogs are trained for our victims and also trained to take care of the victims' kids while we're interviewing the victims.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good.
We're excited to have her.
So does she live with you?
She lives with Alex.
Oh, with Alex.
So Alex is her handler, and Alex is part-time. She's in 20 hours a week, so whenever Alex is here, Finley's here. But she's been pretty flexible and said that she's willing to bring her in on any of her off days if we have a child that needs to be interviewed, or if we have a really tough case where she can just give additional comfort. She's going to be introduced over to the police department in their training. They're having 4 training sessions, and Alex is going to introduce her over there in case they need her for a police interview with a child, or someone that just could use a little extra comfort.
So is it Cole, the dog over there? Yes. Yeah. So I guess
Watch them work.
So I guess she can meet her siblings within the city, right?
Yep.
Well, that's neat. I'm glad to see that addition. That I know how much it helps people in being able to have an animal, regardless of the type of animal. But dogs certainly, are the most common. So
People have been enjoying working. She's only been with us for a couple of weeks here, but we've gotten very positive feedback from the people that have interacted with her so far.
you can tell she's a good dog.
Yeah, she's good. The only thing we're really working on is she's very attached to Alex still, so when Alex gets up to go to the restroom, she's like, "Where are you going, Mom?" But other than that, she's, does everything we ask.
Very good.
Karen, can I ask you a quick question? You talked about the number of new victims served. Is there a recidivism rate? I mean, do you guys have some clients back over and over and over again?
We do, but we also serve clients for many months at a time, especially with the criminal justice system, because sometimes cases will take months, even years. So for grant purposes, we only count them once per grant year, but we may have like 50 victims from the year previous that we're still working with. Actually, it's usually a lot more than that. So,
A question for you. Do you have an idea, or have there been an uptick in 2020 compared to what we were seeing in 2019?
yes, there is. And we actually had the police run the numbers for us a little while ago, but we have had more domestic violence. What I've been seeing, though, is that the level of violence, in my experience, is tending to escalate, too. We're getting some pretty scary cases.
That's
Karen's
not good.
very humble, but she is one of the best advocates in the state of Utah. She actually sits on all the boards that actually review the grants for other advocates and has assisted in opening other advocates, Kaysville, Clearfield. There are several others as these grants have become available, and Karen has always sought after to be able to start those, and so she's awesome. And then we've expanded our program here into the housing program. We got Kelly Rustin, a 30-year vet of the police department, who's actually handling these cases, and there's nobody who understands domestic violence, except maybe Karen better than Kelly does. So we're really grateful. And we got Alex is a part-timer. She's going to school getting her social work license and training. But Alex did what Karen did in Syracuse for quite a while, so we're grateful to have her as well. Then we've got volunteers that work with us, so.
Okay.
This is the most intelligent attorney in the office, right here.
Dave did try to give her the city attorney placard.
I thought we were voting.
Karen, quick question. I know this is a review and it's required, but what can we do as mayor and council to help?
You know, I have to say Layton's been one of the most supportive
Or
cities
what else can we do?
out there. I mean, I guess what we'd ask is continued support. There's always, we're being mainly federally funded. There's always the risk if the federal funding goes. I think part of VOCA's hope for having us present is to give you guys an idea of what our programs do and who we serve, so that if anything does ever change with the federal funding, we can go to our city leaders and see what the city can do to help with that. Right now, they're pretty solid. I mean, I guess none of us know what's going to happen with COVID, but the grant funding that they're using right now is typically the funding that was awarded several years ago. So where we may get hit is 4 or 5 years down the road, but we'll cross that bridge when it comes.
But didn't you say that already this quarter, or this physical year, you've burned through what you would normally burn in a quarter, correct?
Yes,
In just
yep.
30 days?
Yes, and with our housing grant, we requested what we thought we would use per year. When we applied for the housing grant, it was a 2-year grant application process. So being a new program, we estimated at least 25% more for this year. But there is the understanding from VOCA that if we need more money than we can use, we can potentially apply for an amendment during the grant year to ask for more money. And if it's available, that's a possibility. If it's not available, then at that point we would have to focus more on putting a cap on our monthly, saying we can only help this many victims with rent each month until the funding is used up.
So Karen, with all the CARES monies and stuff out there, and with the fact that domestic violence is on the uptake, has there been any COVID monies available for victims advocate groups like yours that you can tap into additionally to help with housing for that?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's too bad.
I know that there are some folks in the field that are doing surveys on this, because a couple, like the U of U has reached out to us to say, will you complete our surveys on what's needed and what information. So I know that there's studies being done, and so I'm hopeful that something may happen in the future.
But, so some of that CARES money, at least my understanding, are reimbursements for the city's expenses because of COVID. How is that not, I guess the city's not spending the money, but it would seem it's COVID related, and yet we can't help with any of the CARES money?
Well, we remember a lot of our CARES money, we went ahead and put into the programs similar to this. And I know that from the county, basically the state money that was distributed, went to the county, and then the county, has passed it along. We've received one tranche of that. And there's a total of 3 tranches, providing you use your funding. And I know that our staff is still in the process of allocating that funding from that first tranche. But it sounds like technically we can use it for staff that is in the, primarily for your police and fire departments and that, your emergency services. So, I mean, in a way, I don't know, maybe Gary, you can look at some details for us and see if there's any way this could fall into that. I know that that's a big gray area and a huge area of discussion and topic, but that would be about the only way I think we could possibly do it, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
They're becoming more liberal as to how we use that.
yeah.
And that was in the new CARES package. They were trying to liberalize, even in the Republican package, which didn't provide any local funding. They did provide liberalization for us to be able to spend it in more ways than we want. Is that correct, Gary? Okay.
Yeah. So I think certainly, you know, I know that our staff is aware of that, and they're diving into it and seeing what we can do and how we can really allocate that funding. So yeah, stay tuned.
Tell you about sub-percentage too.
Yeah, Dave just flashed a
Yes,
sign.
that's a good point.
Just real quickly, this guy here raises money.
Talk to the mic so that everybody can capture this, because this is good.
So Dave, for many, many years, has actually funded, or through collections from the
Employees.
Sub for Santa, and he hasn't quit since he retired. But all that money goes to Karen's victims, and we've had some great Christmases for some very, very needy individuals. But every single Christmas, it hasn't stopped. And
what he does is epic. I mean, we give him a list of the ages, the genders, needs, wants of the kids, and he and his family purchase it, wrap it, label it, bring it here. The victims pick it up, and they have Christmas, so it's awesome.
thank you.
Let's not think that I do this all, okay? I mean, I get money from the city, and then I've got friends that have more money than they need, so I make them pay when. But we used to do it in the city, and people would come to us. And sometimes you don't pick the right people, if you know what I mean. They really didn't need it. But when we found out about the Victims Advocate, you don't have to worry about anything. It's beyond if they need it. It's how much. I mean, it's, you know.
It's been really nice for us because when we're dealing with crime victims, they don't know when it's going to happen and they don't plan ahead. And to register for most of the Sub for Santa programs, you've got to register by like 2 to 3 months before. So if something happens in December and someone's derailed, they don't have a whole lot of fallback options. So it's been nice knowing, okay, I can call Dave. And I have to say another thing unrelated to Sub for Santa. We've also called Dave at like 5 o'clock on a Friday and said, hey, can you get food? Because we just never know what we're going to come across. And a month or so ago, we had a lady that we had tried to work with a little bit earlier, and she wasn't ready to leave. Well, she made the move and she left, but because of COVID, her hours got cut greatly. So she called us to see if we could help her with rent. And as we were doing that, Kelly was asking her, do you have food in the home? And she said, I've got some food. He said, what food do you have in the home right now? And she had like a bag of rice and a bowl of noodles, and that's about it. So we called Dave, and we're like, I know it's 5 on a Friday, but, and he let us come up and just really helped us make that food delivery, so.
Again,
nice
that's
having
not
contacts.
me, okay?
It's who
I
you
mean, I
know.
answered the phone, but it's through an agency that allows it, yeah.
So good
don't
resources
think
are
I'm
important.
some great
Yeah.
guy. I
He's a great guy.
just-
He has more resources now.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, couldn't resist. You're missing an opportunity here, but, okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
for
thank you very
having me.
much, and thanks for bringing Finley with you so we could meet her.
Finley,
Finley,
my grandkid's name.
same as, I know, I got a relative in Finley. Okay. Let's see, let's move on to item number 2, which this will be presented by Steve Jackson, and he's going to give us an update on the extension of the Layton Parkway to 2700 West.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's good to be here tonight. I'm going to invite Gary to come up and present with us here as we talk about this project. As you know, we're in the midst of a major freeway construction down the middle of I-15. We're in the midst of a freeway construction on the east side of Layton, and we want to add to that by discussing the potential construction or the upcoming construction of West Davis Corridor and what that means for Layton on the west side of the city. So I'm going to zoom in here. We are in the midst of purchasing property. The city has approved funding to build Layton Parkway from 2200 West out to 2700 West. Previously, the city has committed that we would have a road to 2700 West that UDOT, as they built West Davis Corridor, would be able to connect the interchange to. So this is the culmination of that promise, that commitment. As UDOT gets closer to build West Davis, Layton City needs to uphold our end of the agreement and build Layton Parkway. So we've recruited Gary and his team to help us out with the property acquisitions that we have on this project, and we just wanted to give a brief overview of what we're doing and maybe some of the extents of this project as it pertains to property acquisition and future plans. So as you can see, we've got a lot of different colors on the screen here, and I'll start kind of on the east side of the project here at 2200 West. We're proposing each one of these different colors represents a different parcel, even though the picture behind it shows farm fields and things. The farms are not, the fields are not following property lines per se, but the majority of the property that this roadway will go through is actually owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so they'll have a large portion of that we'll need to discuss with them. But over here, we're planning to connect to 2200 West and Layton Parkway, and then as the road travels west, we have a easement that we need to purchase for drainage that will need to go through some of the church property and then a subsequent property owner as it reaches the West Davis corridor. Then it will travel under the corridor, and then we're talking with the Nature Conservancy District or Nature Conservancy about accepting that water. We typically have a great relationship with them where they accept the storm water, and then they use it to enhance the wetlands and the areas that they manage out there. So as you head further west, there's this piece that's also owned by the church, and well, all of this up to this line up, the kind of bluish line is all of the church's property. So we have a large portion of that needs to be acquired for this roadway. Then we have a parcel here that has an existing detention basin on it that's also part of the open space of this subdivision that we're going to need to take care of and relocate over here to the east side of Layton Parkway and keep it contiguous to the subdivision and relocate that detention area. From there, we're heading west through a couple of other property owners till we get to 2700 West, where we're then going to tie in, and this line work down in the bottom corner of the screen is actually the line work from UDOT's proposed West Davis Corridor project as they're working to do that. So the focus is to get the road all the way out here to this intersection of 27 and Layton Parkway and tie into, or have a road to tie into with the West Davis project so that everything is contiguous and everything functions properly. And then from there, excuse me, we anticipate.
Question, Steve, before you move on. Yeah, I was just curious why the detention basin had to be relocated. Is
Yeah.
it because the intersection moved and it's going through the middle of it, or what's the reason?
Yeah, a couple of items there, Tom, is that as we're bisecting this, originally the intersection was going to be located in this corner of the detention basin, but as we got in discussions with UDOT, the corridor for the West Davis corridor was actually too close to this intersection, and as we discussed with them, the distance between this point and this connection point would have been so close that we would have created another issue like we had at Hillfield Road and I-15, where the intersections are too close together, and we would have created a major traffic problem. So traffic modeling showed that we needed to extend the distance between this intersection to this intersection, and it needs to be at least 650 feet. So doing that, we had to realign the road, and because this is the open space as well as the detention basin for this subdivision, we felt like it was important to keep this subdivision whole and keep their open space as contiguous and usable to their subdivision as possible, because once you put an 84-foot right-of-way through the middle of that detention basin, this would become difficult to use as open space, and then it also has other potential to be combined with these surrounding properties into a future development of some kind. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it's what I kind of thought, but I was just
Yeah.
wanted to ask for sure.
Yeah, so this roadway was originally planned to be at the bottom of that detention basin. It was relocated up here in conjunction with UDOT and their discussions so that we could ensure that we have a viable interchange and corridor into the future where we won't have any traffic issues or backups, and so we feel like we've got a really good design there that will allow for future growth in this area to happen without creating any of those traffic headaches that a lot of people seem to feel come with potential development. So, and then moving, go ahead.
Does that detention basin, I mean, does the road cut it off so it no longer could be a detention basin?
It could possibly function as a detention basin. The road would actually act as a dam right in the middle of that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
And so we'd have to put in some major pipes and things, but in essence, if it's a combined use where we're getting a detention basin and an open space, and so
Right.
we'd like to keep it that way. And
You'll
the-
still use it as a detention basin.
Yeah, so
Right.
we're going to keep the piece east
Right.
is the proposal as a detention open space, and then just create more open space detention over here to replace this detention
Right.
open space.
Yeah.
And that way it continues to have that dual use, but then it opens up kind of the southwest side of Layton Parkway for a future business center that's been approved and planned into our general plan in the future, so.
That was my question, where the business park is located with,
So all of this area in this, kind of towards this interchange is all part of that proposed business center in the future. I think there's a transition, maybe I'll lean on Tim a little bit to see, does the business park go all the way to 22, Tim, or is it kind of, there's a transition somewhere?
While he's pulling that up, let me ask one other additional question then in regards to that. So,
Yeah.
knowing that you're looking at relocating the detention basin, and that detention basin was part of the villas at Harmony, I think is what it was, and that becomes an HOA issue, do they then now have to take care of this bigger area? I know that,
Well, so
I just got to ask the question because it'll surface
the
eventually.
proposal is that the detention area be replaced in a similar size as what's over there in that open space that we're taking or cutting off and then doing that. So there will have to be that understanding that it's their open space still, and they would still have to maintain that. But the intent is not to increase the obligation or the I guess you would say the maintenance of that onto them if it's not an equivalent I guess impact to them, if that makes sense.
So, yeah, along that line, Steve, then that property that's south of there, the old detention pond, plus there was a little bit of Allen land,
Yeah.
that'll be purchased by the city, I take it?
So, yeah, sorry, let me jump
Or who will
back
be
to that.
who will be the owners in the end?
Yeah.
Well, so whatever we have to purchase, the intent is that we would maybe have to do some land trades or some selling of the property. If the city buys it, then we might be able to sell it to somebody else. And obviously, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a big land holding here. But there's some pieces, for example, I think, Tom, you were referencing that orange piece. There's this piece right here in blue that's actually part of the church's property that may make sense that possibly Allen Land would want, and so maybe there's a trade that could happen between those two. Those are all things that Gary and his team have been asked to help us with. We draw the lines and we tell them what we need, and then Gary works his magic, and I don't use that word lightly because this is a major undertaking. to make all of this happen with his group, and so we rely pretty heavily on them to help us. But in everything we're doing, we're trying to make sure that we're fair, that we're compensating people fully for the property with the appraisals that we have. We have a process, and I'll let Gary speak to that a little bit more as to how the whole process works and how we ensure that we're treating everybody fairly and that we're making sure that we're upholding our fiduciary responsibilities as to the citizens of the city as we build this, but also making sure that the property owners are being compensated fairly under the laws that we have. So I guess to Clint, to your question, Clint, there is kind of the outline there of the business center. So 27 is right here. Layton Parkway is right here. So you can see it's an extensive part of the area that we're looking at, and so it's actually a very big part of our master plan for this West Layton area. In addition to the funding that the council has already appropriated for this project, we've requested a grant from the Davis County COG for the third quarter transportation funding that they're actually deciding on how to allocate right now, and we've asked for about $11.8 million to help build 2700 West. The request is all the way to Hillfield Road, but we acknowledge that it's a lot of money, and if they would grant us some of the funds, we would be able to at least try and bring this property up to Gentile Street. So
What was that figure again?
the total request is about $11.8 million to go all the way to Hillfield Road. This section is about 7.8 if we build the entire roadway width. There's options. We can split the road into kind of a half width like we've done on Hillfield Road. The proposal for Layton Parkway to build it is a half width right now with additional width added as development occurs. So then moving north on 2700 West, we're trying to split the section line here. There's the drainage pipe that we have, we affectionately call the jungle ditch. It drains all of the water from up north all the way through down to the Nature Conservancy. So, excuse me. So there's a couple other Allen Land, Mike Clondrianos, and then Susan Chen is a property owner here on the corner, owns a little piece, and then the remainder of it is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So with that, that's kind of a brief overview of where we're at with the project, or at least the property takes that need to happen, the acquisitions. But I'm going to let Gary kind of speak to the process of where we go, how it works, to kind of remind everybody what that process is and what the property owners can expect as we move forward.
So is Susan Chen the most recent owner there? Because that changed hands within the last couple
Yes.
months.
Yes.
She's the new owner?
New owner, yeah.
Yeah, so we've done this many, many times in the city over the years, and we work very closely with engineering and also planning to make sure that we come up with the best result both for the city and for the citizens that are involved in these situations. Our first approach is to notify everybody, and so we've gone ahead and everybody along that corridor has been notified now, and we've sat down, we've gone out, we visited with them. We don't begin negotiations yet, although we do have some concepts and some ideas and get their thinking on things like trades. You see that area up there that may be consolidated or assembled to make a better piece for development, and we may end up in doing some trades in that direction. So the first step is to notify everybody, and the second step then is to agree upon an appraiser, and the appraiser actually goes out and walks the property with the individuals involved. We're not going to appraise every single piece of property because we've asked the property owners whether they want their property appraised or whether they're willing to live by the appraisal. For example, the church owns a lot of property in there, and if we evaluate the cost of that property, chances are another similar property right across the street doesn't need to be appraised as well, because takings appraisals are very, very expensive. So as long as we come to an idea of what fair consideration or fair market value is, then we bring that back to you. And we give you the opportunity of taking a look at the situations that we've managed to come up with, and you must give final approval to those. Typically what the City Council has done is to give us some flexibility within a range of of the appraised value. And typically it's about within 10% of the appraised value, we can go ahead and begin to make offers on these properties. But we would once again bring those values back to you, show you what we've done. There is always a threat of eminent domain over the heads of anybody whose property is being acquired, and we realize that and recognize that. We comply with state law by, at the very earliest opportunity in negotiations, indicating that there is available to these folks an ombudsman who actually deals with these issues. In addition to that, we let them know that I cannot make a decision as to what price or what type of situation I can arrange for these folks, because it's you that actually makes that final determination. And so I must let them know that up front as well. And then we put together the appraisal. We'll bring the appraisals back to you and the result of our negotiations back to you. There is an opportunity during a public meeting for the individuals to come in and make any comments that they wish to make regarding how the negotiations are going. And sometime before we ever would even consider the E word, which is eminent domain, that must take place. But I've got to tell you, in my entire 30 years here with the city, that we have only used eminent domain twice, and in both of those cases they settled before they actually even began litigation. And so really when it comes down to it, we don't like it, we don't use it, we tend to want to be able to negotiate that rather than use it. Just to give you an indication of how fair the councils have been in the past, I remember doing some acquisitions on Fort Lane years ago, and we used two different appraisers. We used one on the south end of Fort Lane and one on the north end of Fort Lane, different appraisers. And they came up with a different result as a result of what's called proximity and severance damages. And I remember going to Alex and saying to him, you know what, these property owners are getting much less than what the property owners to the north did. He took it back to the council, and we ended up in increasing the compensation to the others. And that's the type of thing that Layton has done in the past, and that's the way we're going to approach this situation. We're going to work close with engineering to make sure we don't take more than what we need to, and we're also going to make sure that we don't use taxpayer funds to bring about a windfall for anybody. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to have somebody fairly compensated. So that's the process that we would be involved with. We want to keep you updated each step of that process, those processes. Sometimes things move rather quickly, and so we will bring them back to you quickly. We may be a phone call that we make to you and say, this is what we're doing. But we try to keep you updated as to what's going on. There's a lot of interest in trading right now, in just even talking to the property owners and in doing some trades. And it may be, there are some situations where we just end up buying the property and then reselling it or retrading it. But we'll work out those deals the best we can for you, and then we'll bring them back to you. And if you agree with them, then we'll go ahead and proceed to finalize these situations. But we do appreciate this council and the support they've given us in the past, and we think it'll go that well. So, any questions that you might have?
Just a comment, the overall project of 2700 being the exit off of the corridor and where the parkway is, those meetings were held 2-3 years ago, public meetings.
Several
just
of them.
for those who may not know that, so you're talking about when it's actual time for the property, not the overall project. That's already been decided.
That's
previous
correct.
councils.
Yes, that's correct, Councilor.
And the Citizens Review Committee and everything. So, I mean, there's been a lot of input on that.
But some citizens have received surprises, like when you get a piece of property like the one you were talking about, Councilman Day, where it has changed hands, and somebody may not have told somebody else that there's going to be a road through there. There may be some surprises, and so we have had a little bit of that take place. But most of them know exactly what's going to happen. The LDS Church knows what's going to happen, and the other property owners were not surprised when we came through, so thank you for that.
Is there any difference between eminent domain for a private citizen and a business like the church?
Exactly the same process.
Same
That's a good
procedure?
question. Yeah, it's the same process, whether it's an individual or not. We'll do the same type of appraising, and then we'll negotiate. The only more difficult part is you're dealing with a corporation rather than a Sometimes in those negotiations, it takes going up the chain in order to get approval, and sometimes through 2 or 3 different organizations. But we've done that before and successfully done that. I'm thinking of Hillfield Road. There was a lot of acquisition that involved the church on Hillfield Road, so.
Some of these property owners have actually approached the city knowing what the plans are here and knowing what's going on with West Davis. So they've actually been proactive to reach out as well and make sure that their concerns are being addressed up front. So that's part of why the road is where it is because we've tried to help make it so that these pieces are very usable after this road is built, but enhancing the area and enhancing the transportation network without being a detriment for those property owners that are in the area.
Well, we go out with the engineers and we blame it on them, which is really a good strategy. If they get mad, we blame it on them. If they're happy about what happens, the
No,
attorney's
point it back
office.
at you.
That's kind of what they say. They blame it on you.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the next step, right now, we're in the process of appraisals, and that'll take a little while. So we'll be back to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gary. Thank you, Steve,
you.
on that. And again, this was just information only, so no action needed, but let's carry on. We have on to item number 4, and Tim Watkins will talk about the development agreement and rezone for the Lamano property.
Thank you, and good evening. Good to be with you. So this item was this item was tabled in the last council meeting to this council meeting date to allow the applicant time to work through the details of their concept plan for the proposed rezoning from the RM1 PRED to MU, or mixed-use development, consistent with the vision for a town center at this location near Fairfield and Gentile. This is the existing concept plan, and what you see here is the work that the applicant has done to identify recreational amenity features and locations on the site. And these are referred to in the text of the development agreement, with one slight modification that we would like to recommend the council consider. But generally what you see here, and if there are any questions, we have Zach and Brian Lamano here that could respond. But they've detailed the front courtyard area, kind of a space between the public street and the front entrance of this building, as a nice sitting space and a kind of leisure space. Pavilion and child play area, they've kind of identified preliminarily a sandbox. It could be other type of child play. And then circulation, pedestrian bike circulation throughout the site, especially this sidewalk here as a all pedestrian connection through. And then some form of landscape recreational amenity in the detention area. And then they've highlighted the landscaping as well. So these are the highlights of it. This is a development agreement language that the highlighted area would be the recommended modification, just to assure that there's some level of flexibility while keeping consistent with the overall intent and details of the concept plan. But for example, as they finalize the details and design of the detention area, maybe a volleyball court doesn't fit, but something like a pickleball, basketball half-court or equivalent in the stormwater area could be the right fit. So at the concept level, it's a little hard to drill down, but I think the staff recommended this is a text that keeps them obligated to fulfill the intent and the vision of this concept plan. So with that, I'd be happy to respond to any questions if you might have them also with the applicant.
Council?
Okay. So where to start? This is great. I'm glad to see that this came back. There's one piece missing out of it, though, that I was hoping would be brought out. and that is something, this multi-use building. And I was hoping there would be something in the development agreement that held them to that lower level of that one building being commercial or
Oh.
home business. That it not be, my concern is down the road, you know, it's not viable as a commercial, then it, you know, reverts back to 2 more apartments. I don't want to see that happen. And in my mind, that's, you've lost any hope of multi-use with that. So I was hoping there would be something in there that, in the development agreement, that identified that they must do that particular, there needs to be something that's not residential. And I don't know how that would happen. So a couple questions. The development agreement holds any prospective developer, correct? If they don't do it and somebody else buys the land, they're stuck with this, right? It
Correct.
goes with the land.
Yes.
Okay, and then in 4.6, on the owner's undertaking, it says he agrees to limit development to the uses and requirements provided herein. And that's why I say I was kind of hoping there would be limiting that particular building to have, you know, reflected that it had some commercial use to it. But it further goes, it says, in such event, the city and owner mutually agree to amend this agreement in writing to reflect such rezoning. Does that then come back to the planning commission and the city council? Are they the city at that point?
If there was ever an attempt to reconfigure this to the point that a rezone was required, then it's just stating it does need to come back to the full public review and approval process.
Okay. And it also talks about the amenities and stuff don't need to be completed until 32 units or 2 buildings. Is there any kind of bond being held that if 32 units or 2 buildings get partially built and not completed, that there's something there that completes the exterior of this landscaping and stuff?
But yes, well, similar to a PRUD development, the value of the landscaping, the amenities
Okay.
would be provided by the developer, reviewed by the city, and then the appropriate bond collected and then
Okay.
issued back upon completion.
Okay, and then, when the DRC takes a look at this, in view that this is one of the first, I think, MUs that we've done under the new general plan that I'm aware of, with the DRC being responsible for looking at it, are they aware and will they be given the new guidelines, building guidelines that are, because the general plan talks in multi-use, that I think there are 14 design guidelines that are supposed to be followed in these, and will they be adhering to utilizing those in their design review process?
Well, yeah, so I think most specifically, they look at what the actual code requirements are in terms of the zoning code regulations, and now an adopted agreement. But yes, I think it'd be great to refer to the general plan to show what
Okay.
this is intending to adhere to those.
Because like I said, I kind of
development.
think this might be the first one we've done since that one's been implemented. And I will tell you, what I was really pleased to see, and I hope in this 4.1.1 that it doesn't alter in any way, and that is that courtyard on the building that fronts Gentile. One of the concerns I had about this project is that it places that building awful close to the street. I mean, it potentially could be, you know, right almost on the sidewalk under those kind of guidelines in the town center, where the PRUD they had before pushed it back. And that's why I was a little bit more comfortable with that. This is a major intersection. This is a major traffic area. And I would hate for that building to be so street fronted that it's a danger. This courtyard, I think, is a nice addition to that building that sets the residential doors a little bit further back from the sidewalk, which is, I think, a very positive thing in the design of that. So kudos to whoever came up with the courtyard, and I would hope that that does not fall out of this plan at all, that that building is protected with that courtyard.
Correct. I think that being consistent with, is the key term with the exhibit, which is the plan and the mention of the courtyard area, then that is a regulatory requirement, so.
Okay, great, because I know sometimes we build things, and I know from being on the planning commission before, I'd go back and go, did we really approve that, you know? Because things do change when you get into, utilities and all kinds of stuff as to whether or not it can happen. But that's one thing, I mean, great, I want to see all these other amenities, but that one in particular, I think, is great in the fact that it provides some protection for those front doors right there on Gentile. So I think it's great.
Any other
questions or
comments?
comments?
Yeah, so along that line, Tim, does the wording there guarantee that that's going to happen, the courtyard?
Yes, due to the specific.
Consistent
incident
with?
here, and then the consistency with the exhibit, where it is shown on the exhibit.
Okay, so I'm pretty good with everything except for I like the modification because I personally don't think the volleyball court's going to work back there. I think a basketball court would be much better. And I think even the Bowery, if you look at that area, I mean, the whole site's only 2.1 acres. That's not going to be a very big Bowery there. Maybe the Bowery could even be moved off to the west there somewhere to make it a little larger, a little more whatever.
Yeah, in discussing this with the applicant, I mean, they did a quick turnaround, and I think it helps spell out the potential of this. Maybe the child player doesn't want to be right at the corner of the parking, and so it shifts over here, and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah, I think that would be my only comment on it. I personally don't care about a dog park, but I think you've done a good one here with that.
Okay.
So is there any way in when we do this, and maybe this is a question for Gary, under our options, can we make any change or recommendation for some wording in the development agreement that there has to be commercial space, live-work unit, something that's going to prevent part of that building from being down the road just turned into another apartment building? Otherwise, I don't think this qualifies for multi-use zoning if it becomes just all apartments.
Yes, you can add that, if you wish to add that to the development agreement. Just that it would be a contractual obligation that the developer and anyone who buys this piece of property after him would have from that point forward. And so if the city were to enforce it, it would be based on that contractual obligation under the MDA or development agreement.
So that's building 4. So if a motion's made, it would just be to,
To approve the agreement,
and then with building 4, having some language to.
comport with the commercial standards
with
under the
commercial
MU
standards.
zone.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be specific, what is proposed is a shared conference room, which just kind of provides the opportunity for e-commerce, shared economy kinds of entrepreneurialism to meet a client and customer there. And then 2 live-work units on the ground level, which have the flexibility that if someone does want to operate a home occupation there, they can, and they're designed to relate to the street and the public. And so it doesn't necessarily, the proposal is not that they shall be commercial all the time, but it at least provides that opportunity. And so this is the steps towards and into the commercial realm and mixed use that we've been encouraging developers to apply to meet the spirit and intent of that mixed use ordinance.
Well, I have a problem then if we're going to use the word shall. I think it needs to be that it provides some non-residential. Somehow, the wording needs to be that space that's proposed in Unit 4 is non-residential.
And that is the shared conference room.
Yeah, I don't care what it is, but
Okay.
I would hate a year from now, the shared conference room didn't work out, or the manager's office didn't work out, and all of a sudden we're remodeling it and we're turning it into another apartment because now we have 54 units instead of 53. I want to make sure that there's something in there that allows the unit count to stay at that amount and that space be used for something other than residential. So however that needs to be worded, that's my feeling on it. And I might be alone in that.
If I may, Madam Mayor, maybe add some perspective to that. I think one of the challenges, and Gary could speak to it, is that residential uses are permitted under this zone. And so, as was discussed in the last meeting, you can correct me, Tim, Chad pointed this out, I think, at great length, was that the purpose of the zone is not to say that every specific individual parcel of property that is in the MU zone has to have a mix itself. So what you would be doing, or the council would be doing if you do that, is though you can do it legally, is you'd be excluding a use that is permitted on its face by the zone. The other thing I would give you as just a little bit of perspective is the council, about 15 years ago, a council went through a similar exercise on a piece of property that was north of Antelope Drive, up north of Rumby Island Grill. And at that point in time, the council, independent of what the developer had asked about, and sometimes it doesn't work out this way, had formed an opinion and required that a building, any building that would be built, had to be built and be an office building. And independent of what the market considerations were, that ground sat for 15 years because the market never dictated that. And eventually, after repeated attempts to try to get something to happen in the market, and it was sitting there, another developer came in and built housing on it. That's where the destination homes apartments are. So I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but my only saying is that sometimes when we're imposing things in the moment based on our opinions that don't take into consideration market factors or allow some flexibility to that, what we may end up with is you may end up with not a commercial use, you may end up with nothing. And so you have a piece of space that nobody in the market wants to take, and it ends up being dead because the developer has no ability to put anything else there. I just think that's something to consider. But again, from a legal perspective, how do you exclude something that is on its face permitted by the underlying zone? So that's just a thought.
So my thought on the whole thing is we have a zoning that sits on that property that is residential, 100% residential. The existing zoning that sits on there, the M1 PRUD, with about 40 units. So let's change it to MU and promise we're going to do something commercial and go for more density, 53 units, and we get partway through and decide, oh, it's not, and we're just going to add 2 more units, and now we're at 55, and we're totally residential. I have a problem with that. If we want to stay totally residential, stay PRUD, the zoning that's on the ground. If you want to go MU, part of the MU is to bring the commercial factor in, whether it's an office space or a hair salon or whatever it is. You're asking for additional density to do that. And if you're not going to do that, then I don't think you should have the additional density. That's my feeling on it. Call it what it is. And I remember when I was on the planning commission with Dave Weaver, he used to always say, you know, I sometimes feel like we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And that's has come back on this as a thought process through this whole thing. If what you're wanting is just more density, then be honest. I just want more density. If I'm trying to really do a project because it's going to fit the town center, and you know, we have this option to multi-use zone and bring a little bit of some commercial or office space in because it fits the town center. I keep hearing that, because it fits the town center versus the PRUD, then do it. But don't make it such that you have the flexibility to not do it, and just do nothing more than increase your density. I have a problem with that.
Thank you. I think, again, not to belabor it, I think one of the things that's important to remember is that different zones have different emphases. And so if we take an individual zone and apply all of the other characteristics of all the other zoning designations to it artificially, then we should only have one zone in the city. And it's whatever we come up with, right? We can add this and add that, take this out and take this. But the fact is we have different zoning designations. PRUD is an example. The MU zone is an example, for the specific purpose of trying to promote and emphasize certain factors. The purpose of the MU zone, again, Tim, you're the expert, you can correct me, is not to generate density. It's to get design. You get so much more opportunity under the MU zone to dictate design that fits with the center than you do with a PRUD. And so from the staff's perspective, we've looked at the density, but the real value is that in that area that's going to change so dramatically in the near future. What we do want to do is have something that will add to that change, not to take it away. You know, it'll be an old style design. So we haven't looked at it. That we think that's a good trade-off to have that design emphasis. And if there's a little bit more density, we think the market's going to demand that density in the location that it is, and that demand's only going to grow. So again, I'm not disputing anything that's being said, but there's different zones accommodate and emphasize intentionally different things. So.
Yeah, I might just refer to the purpose of the MU zoning district to provide locations for developments that either combine commercial or retail uses with multifamily residential uses in a building, or provide mixed uses in separate buildings within close proximity to other uses. So the intent and purpose of the ordinance is clear that it's not necessarily to provide that mix in the development, but it encourages the thoughtfulness of the mixed in the area. Added units, more people living there, there's more people buying Subway sandwiches and shopping at Smith's, and that benefits the city for sure. Helps make a project more cost feasible, so especially as construction costs and housing costs increase. We have encouraged applicants in MU projects that where feasible to at least recognize the growing demand for shared economy and to build that into, this function of a shared conference room. I think substantial, a great amenity. And I think more and more as these online kind of entrepreneurial opportunities arise, this will be a great amenity and commercial element, I might call it, in the development. They're pretty excited about that opportunity.
And I am too, if there's a guarantee that it's there.
Okay, and I mean, the ordinance does not require it, but I think they just wanted to share what they saw as the potential and the opportunity, and they're committed to it, and
Okay.
ready.
Tim, thank you, and I think if there's any more discussion, certainly we'll be talking about this in the next meeting, so I think we can bring up additional comments there if you guys don't mind, because I'd like to kind of move on to our agenda items. Is that okay, Mr. Morris? I know you're just getting ready to mention something. Do you want to finish, or are you okay for the next meeting? Okay, thank you. Okay, so council, let's just go ahead and, Tim, you're through on that presentation, right? I
Yes.
mean, you didn't need to add anything more that we needed
That's
for the
correct.
decision. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to item number 5. And again, Tim's going to be presenting that, and that's on the municipal code. So go ahead, Tim.
Yes, thank you. So this is a brief summary of what will be coming at you in the next couple of city council meetings. And we just wanted to take the opportunity to provide a bit of a synopsis of the highlights and the importance for this ordinance to be considered for potential adoption. And so there we go. So the Planning Commission recommended approval of the draft off-street parking amendments on July 14th with some suggestions for additional refinement and clarification, and we'll meet with them next Tuesday on the 11th of August. We're working as staff to finalize these refinements, and we'll provide the full document to the City Council for detailed review at the August 20th work meeting. And the general objectives of the Comprehensive Code Amendment are to apply best practices and standards, to right-size parking ratios and parking space dimensions, to improve consistency and format of the ordinance, and to create new parking tool options. Decades-old parking standards need to be updated to reflect current parking trends. A more clear and detailed parking ordinance will help business owners and developers understand the city's requirements as they start up, grow, evolve, and invest in our community. Every day, city staff provides reviews for business license renewals and new development to assure that there is sufficient parking supply. Efficient use of land benefits not only the landowners and developers, but the entire community as well. Midtown area, for example, has significant parking vacancies in some areas, and this is an area where the general plan supports infill development for increased economic development and neighborhood vibrancy. Benefits of right-sizing parking standards include more land for business, homes, and open space plazas. Just a kind of a crude illustration on top of this aerial image of the Target parking lot, even in December, which is a seasonal high for the shopping at that location. But with better parking standards, more detail, we can explore and encourage infill development and right-size that parking. This can result in less heat reflection, improved community aesthetic, less waste of land and materials, and more site development cost savings, which benefits housing affordability and business feasibility. All right, there's some emerging land use trends over the past few decades that are influencing driving patterns and parking demand. These include public transportation options that continue to grow and expand, telecommuting options, especially of interest lately. We see increased housing costs and car ownership costs, and so when available and when possible, more and more choosing to try and own fewer cars. And then a growing trend of e-commerce and retail. And I thought you might be interested to see this recent graphic that, so this shows the national e-commerce trend, which has increased to 16%, up 6% over the last 6 years, over 6% over 6 years, and is actually projected to reach 30% by 2025. E-commerce shopping reduces vehicles in parking lots while increasing demand for local delivery to homes and businesses. So we want to be cognizant of these emerging trends and stay current with best parking practices. And so some of the resources we've looked at include staff's review of similar sized cities in Utah and other states, the 2019 Institute of Transportation Engineers parking manual, and then a shared parking manual produced by the Urban Land Institute, National Parking Association, and International Council of Shopping Centers. We've also visited several apartment communities in Layton and Clearfield since early March to better understand peak parking demand for multifamily projects, and I'll touch on that in just a moment. So a few key updates. Here's sample pages from a more complete list of land uses and parking ratio standards, and these capture the variation between commercial, residential, and mixed land uses, and provide details and clarifications for how to apply the standards. Here's an example of the addition of bike parking to the ordinance that would apply to commercial, non-residential, and residential projects. And these will continue to encourage active transportation and healthy lifestyles. Here are examples of the dimensions, definitions, and diagrams for parking design to help establish clarity of city standards for safe and convenient access to parking areas. The addition of ADA parking requirements to assure compliance with the Americans with Disability Act and provide parking standards to accommodate all abilities. And then some shared parking options. We do have some shared parking language in our current code, but we found opportunities to further clarify and define when and how those opportunities could apply. Supports the right size parking objectives and creates parking efficiency by allowing parking within 500 feet of, between new and existing development projects. Again, that language is in our current code. Another option for reduced parking is a joint parking analysis. Support multiple uses on site for walkable mixed-use development or other types of development. It's an opportunity for mass transit to further support the goal of right-sizing parking in Layton. And it's an image that shows multiple uses on a site. And then here's an example from the parking ordinance. Let's see, so this is a tool that would be provided to show the percentage of use by different times of the day for various types of uses, and then combine those together to find what the overall parking demand is on a site. So some great tools that are being developed. And then also some structured parking standards to provide compatible design when parking structures face streets, or to encourage garages behind buildings in less visible locations with appropriate lighting and wayfinding signage. I mentioned the multifamily parking ratios, and here's what's recommended. And so the average is what we base for a 2-bedroom, and then that's shown as a 1.75. 3-bedroom would go up a bit, 1-bedroom and studio below, and that's based on this parking usage counts that have been conducted for several apartment communities in Layton and Clearfield. And the findings are that on average, over 20% of the parking is not being used. The actual parking use or demand is at an average of 1.55 spaces and per unit. Our recommendation is to apply the high end of that average based on the higher use counts highlighted on the second row, or the seasons of Layton, which is an average of 1.75 approximately for the two-bedroom apartment. So we'll get into the details of this later, but just want to give you kind of the highlights and the research and study that's gone into these recommendations. Here's another opportunity to provide clarity, is to accommodate appropriate parking of RVs on single-family residential properties. This update would replace the outdated RV parking standards that are contained in both Chapter 12 and Chapter 11, the mobile home parks and travel parks, vehicle parks of the zoning code, and move them exclusively into Chapter 12 off-street parking. So with that summary, the recommended next steps are to provide you with the ordinance that we're just about done touching up and refining, and review that with you in detail on August 20th, and then a potential public hearing on September 3rd. Okay. So that's your update.
No, that's good. I think with the other two items, are we good to hold off on comments, or do you guys have any quick comments or anything? Okay. Very good. Thank you, Tim. We
Thank you.
appreciate that.
You bet.
Okay, let's move on to our, basically our last item here, which are items of discussion, and to help put clarity and direction for for our Parks and Rec Department. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Joellen Grandy, and she's going to present some concepts here.
I have bad eyes, I can't see where to do the full screen.
Let me go get you the advance. That right arrow and then your laser point.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I apologize for that little delay. Today we just wanted to share with you our pickleball long-range planning that we have been working on, among other projects. We want to talk about 3 different approaches to how we are planning pickleball in our community. I know that when I first started here 5 years ago, there weren't any pickleball courts in Layton yet, and so it's been fun to see what we've been able to introduce so far, but we just wanted to share with you from where we are right now to the future. This first slide just shows you one of our approaches for introducing pickleball, and that's at a neighborhood park amenity level. So, similar to what we have at Chapel Park, for example. This is the pickleball courts at Chapel Park, similar to basketball and tennis and softball fields that we have. We see pickleball as another great amenity to offer to our citizens nearby where they live, that they can just quickly go over to it and play a short game with their family and friends. The second approach is something that we don't yet have in our community, but we can look around to some of our neighboring municipalities, and this is Farmington. They have an 8-court complex, so it's a lot larger than the neighborhood park-sized courts that we have introduced, but it provides an opportunity for more of a larger gathering setting where people can create, their leagues or larger competitions of some sort. And again, we don't have one of these, but it's a consideration. And then this third one, we do have 2 different examples of how this has been applied in our community, and we work really closely, as you know, with the Davis School District. They're a great partner of ours, and we have 2 gyms where we have applied pickleball striping onto their gyms as well. This picture that you're seeing right now is for the Legacy Junior High gym. It was recently painted with 8 courts of pickleball, and so our hope is to be able to start programming this gym, that we can have this offered to anyone in the community to come over and enjoy some pickleball, especially during the season when we have a lot of snow and weather changes and those outdoor courts aren't quite as compatible for playing. The other one that we have is, of course, Shoreline, and there's 6 courts that are located there. This map is hopefully helpful for you to kind of understand what we have as our existing courts and then those that are proposed. I have them kind of color-coded and marked in certain ways so that these up the top are our existing courts. They are blue, representing the neighborhood park amenity size courts that we're approaching. Greyhawk Park was our first courts that we introduced to the city. And then we have Chapel Park down here that has 4, and then we had Bayview that has 4. It was a conversion of one of the tennis courts in that park. And then we are presently in the process of repurposing or renovating the Andy Adams Park tennis courts. As you know, they're down right now, but our hopes are to reconstruct those with 1 tennis court and 4 pickleball courts. So those are our neighborhood park-sized pickleball courts that we have presently. We do have proposed other areas at the neighborhood level, and they're just the solid blue. I won't go into detail, just with a matter of time, what they are, but you're welcome to read those on your own. Down here we have the Ellison Park Community Sports Complex, so that's that second example of application of a way we could introduce pickleball to our community, and that location there is at Ellison. We proposed it we have been working on layouts for a 12 to 16 court, and it's just still in the infancy. And then down here we have 2 more existing Davis School District Community Partnership gyms. Again, that's that Shoreline and Legacy. So we were just asked to share a little bit about what our future someday outdoor complex would look like at Ellison. And so here is just a concept of what that could be. Here's our park right now. This site so far is undeveloped, and what we're specifically talking about is just this little panhandle portion right here on your left. This shows a layout of a 12-court complex. There's room for it to grow if needed. This next slide shows a general cost estimate. It's very rough, and as it develops further, it would get narrowed down. But for us to be able to do just the dashed line that's boxed out, we're looking at about $1 million to be able to introduce 12 courts. That includes not only the court development, but also you got to think about the walkways, the concrete, and the infrastructure for irrigation and sod that has to be applied to, as well as the lighting. And we have handouts that should be passed on to each of you, and you can take some time to look through that cost so you can understand better how that breaks down. Let's see, lastly, I just wanted to kind of step back and say, how are we doing compared to other people? And this is a table that kind of shows you what our neighbors are doing. Taking an inventory of all of the communities that are in Davis County, and whether they have outdoor or indoor pickleball courts, and then their total that they have provided. You can see down here at Layton we have 32 total courts when you add up all of our neighborhood parks and then our partnerships with the Davis School District. We have a lot of opportunity for indoor accommodations, especially with living in Utah where we don't get a lot of summer. But anyway, that's just kind of give you a little bit of a snapshot of how we compare to everyone else if you're interested. And with that, I just want to thank you, and if there's any questions, we're happy to answer those.
I just have one. Is there a minimum number of courts that you have to be able to host a tournament?
You know, I'm sure there is. I don't know it off the top of my head.
I was just curious if our proposed 12 meets that minimum. I would think if you're going to,
I believe
if it
that.
didn't, you'd be close. If you were close, that it would be worth putting in the number required for tournaments,
Yeah.
for revenue generation.
Does
8
the,
to
does
12.
the, does the
It is 12.
Farmington one, does the
Yeah.
Farmington one host tournaments?
What's that?
Yes.
Does the Farmington facility
Yeah,
host tournaments?
So does Clinton, not Clinton, but Clearfield will.
Clearfield does, yeah,
Can,
Farmington
Have
has,
to have 8 to 12
Yeah.
to
to do a tournament.
have,
Yeah.
yeah,
Farmington has the minimum. They have 8 presently, so.
yeah.
Okay, good.
That's a minimum, of course.
Okay, I have one quick question. On your Andy Adams, that you're saying that you'll save one of your tennis courts and then convert so that you have four pickleball courts, right?
Yes,
So can you tell me, in relationship to Andy Adams, where is another tennis court?
outside of Andy Adams Park, nearby there.
What would be the next closest one?
Probably Oak Forest or Chapel.
Chapel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the question because it was, so knowing that, I guess I would be curious what the use of that tennis court is versus maybe taking and eliminating tennis altogether there and converting that tennis court into another pickleball court so that you actually ended up with 6 courts in one area versus just 4. I think that's one of the, I don't know, the feedback I've gotten is, quote, the social aspect of this sport. And if you have more courts in one area, that helps satisfy that. So I'm just thinking that might be probably the best area, unless we want to spend a lot of money and try to convert or build more over at Chapel Street. But I don't know. That's
Yeah,
just a question.
that's a good question. So with going back to that philosophy of being able to provide amenities at our neighborhood park level, that provide, we have people who love pickleball, and we also have people who like tennis and other sports as well, and to be able to have those nearby their neighborhood radius that would accommodate them to be able to go there without having to travel too far away. Even if we were to do 8 courts there, I think that the general feeling that we've heard is that 8's really not enough to be able to get that big gathering number that you want. It's more 12, and so focusing more on Ellison Park would be the best place to be able to do that complex, and keeping, especially at Andy, we have a really strong group of people that love their tennis there, and they're missing it, and they
Okay.
really want it back, and I think they would be very disheartened to be able to find out that their tennis was gone.
Well, and that's why I asked the question, how much is it being used?
Yeah, it's one
So,
of our loved.
I mean, it
most loved
seems like we
spots.
hear more from the pickleball people than we do the tennis folks, and so, I mean, we're trying to, not that we have to be all things to everybody, but at the
Right.
same time,
Right.
have a nice balance.
Yeah.
And if it's having more courts in one location, would that be satisfying or not? Is really what I'm driving at here.
I think the key word there is balance.
Mm-hmm.
And as we look at the lifetime of our parks, we see the different recreation amenities ebb and flow. And to remove tennis completely from a park, I think would be the wrong step, personally. If you wanted to put additional courts, so you had an 8-court complex, we have the opportunity at our Harmony Place to do that and still provide tennis and pickleball. But we want to try to keep that balance and the ability for different amenities to be within that walking distance.
Okay. Well, as I look at that $1 million figure, I got to tell you that concerns me. Spending that kind of money, and I get the fact that this is just concept, it would be down the road, but geez, if you can convert or add to another area that would be like, well, even half of that amount I'd feel better about, but more like a quarter of that would
Yeah, if we,
fit better.
as a city, if you wanted to add 8 courts in one area, that is, a step towards that big complex, we have areas that we can do that
Okay.
and still provide tennis. I think it would be a mistake to take away one amenity for another, because in 5 or 10 years, we may see, again, a fluctuation, and tennis may be more popular.
Right.
You're,
Okay.
no matter what you build, it's gonna cost you $1 million. I don't care what if you want to build tennis courts or if you want to build basketball courts or whatever. You take an amenity down at Ellison and take that amount of land and try and do something with it. It's going to cost a lot of money. Now, whether it's $1 million or 800 or $1.2 million, and to me, if you're going to build something and say, maybe I'm going to add on to it, Ellison's the place to do it. You know, because that's what it's designed for. And to be honest, and I realize everything costs money, but we haven't done anything down there either. And with the exception, we did build a nice, what's that thing called? Mud,
Muds and
suds.
blood and beer or something. I don't know.
Suds.
But it was,
Okay.
I mean, you know, but, and so, yeah, there's a price tag attached to it, but I think in the long run, I think we're better off putting something like that down at Ellison, because that's what it's designed for.
I agree, Dave. I also forgot to, or failed to mention, but there's also a level of noise that comes with those big courts. And so Ellison Park is more fit for the level
Something where you might hold a tournament or do things like that, of course it is.
Yeah.
A neighborhood park, you're not going to have the parking, you're not going to have all the amenities that you want.
Yeah.
If you tried to pull something off, crowd them in there. You could put the courts there, but then when you try to do things, you're going to run into some other problems because they're going to be parking in front of my house and, you know, and then, you know, what I'm like. So, anyway, I love, when you say proposed, what does that mean, Dave?
Oh, just a concept, that's all.
Find the proposed are parks that would
So proposed just means we could, not that we're looking at.
Right, yeah. I think what we're driving at here is I think the Parks and Rec staff and Mr. Price here has done an excellent job on identifying different key areas within our
Right.
city on what we could do and how we could aspire and get to a level. And I think they're just looking for direction right now, saying, okay, are they on the right path? I think they need to have direction from us as the governing body to say, yes, is this what we're
You think they need direction?
We believe that the approach we're taking is one that will last a lifetime here in Layton. It is not a knee-jerk reaction. It is providing pickleball as a basic amenity in all of our neighborhoods. And we feel that, as our pickleball players have often told us, pickleball is here to stay. And we agree. And that's why we think it should be an amenity just like a playground, just like tennis, just like our other park amenities. And so we have looked out and tried to identify all those areas that over the years, not tomorrow, but over the years, we can make sure that that's accommodated. And then when and if the time is right, we will look at a large complex.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does that sound good, council? I mean, I see a lot of nods, so I think you got your direction there.
Just one more comment.
Sure.
Since we're talking pickleball and I don't play, okay, I'm too large to fit on those little small courts. But in the future, or even with what we have in the junior highs, we might want to get with some pickleballers and look at that, because there's some issues in there that don't work. And it's nothing overly serious, but it just makes it where they're not, it's hard to play there. And I don't play, but I've gone and watched, and there's some issues there that I think it would be easy to resolve in the course of time. I mean, not tomorrow and not whenever, but, you know, just some little tweaks in it.
Of course,
You know.
we'd be glad to, and we always are wanting to hear and get better, improve.
I know,
so.
you're great. I mean, Joe, you know, and I just say that so it's said, so that we, you know, can maybe look and not just think that this is the way it should be because it fits well. You know, it's kind of like when we did the park at Ellison, and we drew up all the little stuff and put it all in. And I had the best idea, you know, but it wasn't built that way because somebody else really had better ideas. But, you know, I thought no one's smarter than me. I played softball for 1,000 years, but they were, so.
Okay, well, thank you, and I think these guys are aware of some of those issues. In the, I'm looking at the clock here, and actually, we do need to move on to our council meeting. May I ask, knowing that, looking at our agenda items here for the council meetings, would one of you be willing to stay, and perhaps we can cover the last item afterwards? Okay, thank you. I appreciate you accommodating us here, and
Of course, thank you.
that'd be good. Okay, council, do you need a break? Stand up before I move on, or you good? Okay, no comment. I'm moving on. Okay, I'd like to transition now then into our regularly scheduled council meeting for August 6th. Typically, we'd start at 7 p.m. We ran over our last meeting just a hair, so we're starting at 7:03.
Mayor, can you hold on just 1 second?
Sure. I forget about the recording, so I apologize, Kim. Okay, once again, I'd like to welcome everyone out here to our regularly scheduled city council meeting for August 6th, 2020. And as customary, we usually, I'll call this meeting to order. And as customary, we have one of our council members conduct the opening exercise of this. And each month we kind of shift that responsibility. And August is a new month here, so I'm going to turn the time over to Councilman Tom Day.
I'd like to invite everybody to stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll now offer the invocation. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful this evening to be here in the city council meeting. We're thankful for this nice city and this nice area we have to live in and the many blessings that we have been blessed with here. We're thankful for the peace and the tranquility and the general good living that we have here in this city. We're thankful for thy blessings upon us always. We ask you to continue those blessings upon our city and watch over our first responders and watch over all of our residents wherever they may be. Bless us this night in this meeting that we might have thy blessings upon us, so we might come to the right decisions and discuss those things properly as we need to. And this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Mr. Day. Council, first item of business would be to approve our minutes. We've got our minutes from our council budget work meeting, which was on April 30th, 2020, and then the minutes of the Layton City Council meeting, June 18th of 2020. So I'll accept a motion on that.
Madam Mayor, I move that we accept the minutes of the Layton City Council budget work meeting from April 30th, 2020, and the minutes of the Layton City Council work meeting, June 18th, 2020.
I'll second that.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'd like to move on to any municipal events at this time. I know in the past we haven't had a whole lot, so I'll turn the time over to the council for any of those.
Okay, just a couple of items. One, on the 2020 census, it's still going on. And they're going to start with, the government's finally going to start with the door-to-door solicitation from the census takers, and they will be coming to doors properly identified and wearing masks. And so just kind of asking the residents to please participate in that. The funding that we gain from the census is very important to the running of services for our residents. The government it's been requested of Congress to extend it, and that has not happened yet. And so currently we have until September 30th. You still have a chance to go online and fill in the online census, and we really request that anybody in the city that still needs to do that, to please take that opportunity to do that. And the other thing I just want to take a little bit of a privilege on, as far as an activity coming up in the city that the city is not sponsoring, but it kind of relates to our Communities That Cares. One of the tenets of our Communities That Care is drug abuse prevention, and drunk driving kind of falls into that category. And I think most of you are aware that about a week ago we had a young lady in Syracuse, from Syracuse, who was critically injured in an accident by a drunk driver. 4 teenagers from our county were hit head-on coming out of Logan Canyon. And the one young lady has had some life-altering injuries. And as a support for her, there will be some drunk driver education going on this coming Saturday, August 8th, at 1464 West Gentile Avenue at 10 a.m. And it's going to be done in conjunction with a fundraiser for her family. So if anybody would like to attend that, like I said, to learn a little bit more about how we can possibly help prevent drunk driving, that would be, I think, an activity worth attending.
Thank you, Councilman Fitzpatrick. And I can tell you, if you haven't done so on that census, it's very easy and quick. It doesn't take very much time at all. So I highly encourage everyone to go online and fill out that information. So thank you. Councilman Morris.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Councilman Fitzpatrick mentioned. That same young lady worked at Soda Crazy here in Layton, I found out today. And so on Monday, August 10th, I'll be hosting a fundraiser as well for her. A portion of the sales that happen that day will be donated to that family. So she's local ties as well.
I'd just like to mention something that was shared by some of our state leaders yesterday in relation to COVID-19 rent and utility assistance. So they've kind of expanded and liberalized some of the rules to be able to qualify for some of these programs as the federal subsidy for unemployment is expiring. And the rule is if a renter or if you are a renter and your income has been impacted by COVID-19, you may be eligible for assistance of up to $2,000 per month in rent and utility subsidy. There's some household and some area median income restrictions that apply, but it's as easy as dialing 211. You can find whatever local agency in the area, Layton, that may be able to assist. And I would just urge people to take advantage of these programs if you can. These direct pay programs have the biggest bang for their buck because it can help keep you in your home, keep you able to be providing for your family. So again, 211, you can dial a local agency and hopefully be able to get some more information and get some assistance if you are in need of it.
Very good. Thank you for bringing that up, because I know that there are a lot of folks here within our boundaries that could use that assistance. So, Councilor, are there any other municipal events? Okay. Well, thank you very much for helping educate our citizens on the various things going on around here. Now, what I'd like to do is turn the time over to our citizens. So if there's anyone in the audience that would like to come forward and have a comment that's on an item that's not on the agenda, you're more than welcome to do so. We've got a mic on each side of our podium, or a podium here with a mic on each side. We ask you to just please state your name and your address and speak into the mic should you want to make any comments. So the time is now yours.
Dave, I apologize for getting so darn close to you.
Okay.
There are a couple of big guys here.
Ugly has no.
Yeah, you said it. Mayor and City Council, my name is Jerry Warnick.
Okay.
I have my wife Kathy here with me. We live at 1094 South Grace Way in Kays Creek Villas. We just moved there recently. We relocated from east of 89 in Layton, where we've lived for 20 years. We moved from the Washington, D.C. area, where we lived for quite a few years before that. My wife just retired from Layton Public, or Davis Public Schools as a school teacher, special ed.
Thank you.
And we looked forward to our retirement for some time and making arrangements and living arrangements so that we could move into an environment where we would have a homeowners association and have our be able to travel and serve a couple of missions. We were called to serve at Heber Valley Girls Camp, but with COVID, that didn't work out well, and so we're here and appreciate being here. I regret this is the first time we've attended a city council meeting, and should have done that a long time ago. We struggled and worked around and to choose a lot at Kays Creek Villas, and bounced around from a couple of different lots and finally settled on one that had a green strip along the back, something where grandkids could come and play and you could have picnics and other nice things. And we settled on that. We knew that there would be some construction with the legacy extension, or whatever we call that now. And having been we were on the east side of 89, so we're a little familiar with highway construction. And but that we accepted that. We were told that this green path would be something that we would have for us and would be able to use it. I went about a week after moving in a month ago. I walked out and there was a landscaper out in front of my house, and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh," he said, "what have I got to show you here?" He said, "We're going to build a 6-foot wide gravel walking path through the front yard, down the side yard, and through the middle of your backyard." And I said, "Really, gravel?" He says, "Yeah, there's another path we've got right over there. If you go over and look at that, you'll see what we're going to do." Well, I don't know about handing out pictures, and I don't know if that's appropriate with COVID. Can I do that, or should?
Have you got one for each of us, or just?
Pardon?
Is there one for each one of us? Is that what
Yes.
you're? Okay, yeah, go ahead
could
and
I
pass
just-
one.
Okay. The picture that I've got on the front is the pathway that I went over to look at, that I was going to be happy about having through our yard, that would basically shut down the yard for any other kind of activity. So I called it a mud bog, which is what it was. My feet got stuck in the mud. Eventually I called Chad Wilkinson, and he went over and looked at it, and he reported back a similar to my experience. He said, "That's a mess." I began trying to contact Ovation Homes and finally got through to Peter Madsen, and he told me, "Well, the city's requiring it and there's nothing we can do about it now." And eventually was told, well, the only way we ever could is if Ovation was to do an addendum, and it's kind of late for that. I called around, and we tried to work on that, and affectionately, the people around here call that a pathway to nowhere, because this path that's supposed to be built, even if it weren't a mud bog, it goes behind our home out into an open area that will have no amenities. It'll just be an open area, go through there, and we'll go through and go down the other end and come out the other side. And but he said that the city compensated with bonus points, I understand, Ovation Homes, to increase their density, and that was the reason it was approved. So we began doing some talking around, and just this morning we talked to Craig Jacobson over at Ovation, And he said if you can get the city to look at a different amenity, we'd be happy to do that. This walking path that's out there by no means is an amenity. Nobody will use it. It won't be something that a romantic couple can walk along and look into the sunset. It's kind of pathetic, to say the least. And my point is, it was a mistake. I would like to ask the city council to be open-minded to an addendum. I'll sit down as a homeowners association with the controller of the homeowners association, Ovation, and come up with, there are several other opportunities we have within our area to add on to as additional amenities. And we would like that to be considered. So I beg the city council to be open-minded to that. And you know, I used to tell those people that worked for me that integrity in business was, if you make a mistake, own it and correct it. And I hope that that's something that we can do here.
Okay. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. It looks like Tim, you was able to bring the map up. So this, for just, I think for the council's benefit, do you mind explaining where he's talking on this map? Yeah, but I don't know whereabouts.
All right, so this is the annexation agreement concept plan that the annexation agreement is tied to. And so you do see, is it this, between these homes here, is this the, I didn't quite catch where it is, but right here?
There's lot 304 there, right where that little path goes through and wiggles behind there.
All right, and so the intent was to connect the open space pockets together with the pathway.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this area central here, and then there was to be an access to this area here as well.
Isn't that a barbecue pit that's identified there?
Is labeled as, I was able to see it on the other street.
It's the pavilion, but the pavilion was actually moved across the street by the pickleball court. So that path literally goes nowhere now.
So that's why he's saying that there's no amenities. Okay. Yeah. Because I was going to say, according to this map, which I got to say, you know, I mean, on behalf of the council and the planning commission, I mean, a developer comes in and presents a plan, we adopt that plan. That's what is the expectation, is to be able to build and design and follow through with the plan, much like the discussion we had earlier, and which I'm sure we'll have later tonight. So I'm not sure, quite honestly, how we go about this, because certainly it's been approved on this. Gary, do you want to make a comment?
We appreciate the input, of course. Essentially, there was a landscape plan which included a trail which was approved for this subdivision, and the developer has put that trail in. The trail was part of the package that the developer put together in order to, you remember before we had the density bonuses that would be granted as a result of different things being placed in the subdivision. Of course, a trail and those types of amenities were part of what the Planning Commission considered in granting whatever densities that the developer got. So the developer has developed, albeit probably the quality needs to improve maybe of that path, and I know that he's been working on it. I know that there's been work done a little bit further down on the path to try and correct the sinking problem. But notwithstanding that, if you wanted to change an amenity, either the developer, if he was still the HOA or over the HOA, he had the majority in the HOA, could come in and request a change through the proper channel, which would be the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission could then take a look at what the developer was proposing to change in the landscape plan, see if it was commensurate with the ordinance. In other words, if it complied with the ordinance in order to receive the additional density that he got. And if he thought it did, if the planning commission thought it did, they could actually change the amenity if they wish to do that. But it's, the planning commission is your land use authority for that purpose. Then again, you know, if the developer wasn't involved and all the lots were bought, it would be the homeowners association that you'd be dealing with. Unfortunately, one individual can't change the plan. It would have to be a group decision or a developer's decision to come in and apply for a different amenity. And there may be other amenities. I don't, you know, certainly nobody knows until it's recommended. But right now, as of now, that's the way it's planned. And to Mr. Warnick's, who I know very well, by the way, to his point, yes, an application can be made to try and change that, and it would be up to the planning commission to do that. And there's a method of doing that in the city. So his coming to the council tonight and making that request, if the developer, or if the developer is not around, the HOA determined to do that, they could actually move forward with that. So.
Okay,
Got a question for you though, Gary.
yeah.
So this was a required amenity. There was bonus density increase for it. So where is the city's teeth, I guess, to make sure that it's constructed correctly, which obviously this one wasn't?
So Chad has been working on that, and he met with Peter, and Peter looked at it and said, yeah, we need to make some changes. And to the developer's credit, he indicated that they needed to make the changes as well, and they've been working on it. So as part of the development agreement, he had to develop a trail. If the trail is inadequate or was not constructed properly, the city has the ability to go back and request that the developer do that. And he has been, I've got to say that he's been working on doing that from, it hasn't got to this piece yet, because I think maybe he may be looking at the question that has been raised. But on the other end, I know for a fact that they have been working on, I don't know, it's south end, I guess is what you call it, the south end of the trail that is behind the other units, which aren't close to this one here. So we've got the development agreement. We could
Because
enforce it.
I'm not really too in favor of changing the amenity, but I'm certainly
Yeah.
not satisfied with the way this was put in.
Can I talk, Gary, or not?
Is that, I mentioned, just to further respond to your question, the bonding for the landscaping is not returned to the applicant until it's fully inspected and
That's true.
meets the standard, and then that bond is issued back to the developer, and that hasn't taken place yet, so that's an ongoing process.
That's true as well. I forgot
Okay,
we have
so-
the bonding in place, so.
So this section here, I don't know what the condition of the rest of it is, but the picture provided here looks like a little pea gravel on top of mud.
Yep.
Which is not very satisfactory.
So we do have a bond in place. If it's not repaired, we can actually use that bond to make
So
the,
what
do the
kind of
replacement.
time limit do you have on that?
Well, depending on what happens, if an application is filed to change it, maybe you don't want to, you know, take it out right away, but they've got to repair the path, so.
Let me ask for some clarification, because I don't get it. So, this thing we asked them to do, to put in something, and they did put in something. Now, if it's an HOA, or if it's a developer, I don't think it matters. If neither of them want to do it, what's the downside?
Oh, if neither of them want to apply?
If the developer and the homeowners are saying, we don't want it, is there something else we can do?
Don't want the path?
Yeah,
The application.
Then yes.
I mean, they can,
They can recommend another amenity that would fill the bill.
okay, so there still would have to be another amenity?
Yes.
But they
Okay.
have to go through the application process
Gotta do the
because this is
application,
what was
yeah, right,
approved
okay.
by past
Yeah.
governing bodies.
That
Right.
part I kind of got,
So
but,
they were given a bonus density.
right,
Four.
and that's, and then they have to do something in order to get it.
That's good.
If they have already got it, they still have to do something, period. But if somebody come up with a different amenity and they said, I don't want this thing, what's the problem with that?
And
And
There's a
there is no
process.
problem.
There's no problem. There's a
Okay.
process
But
for
that
making
has
that
to be
application.
brought before the planning
Right.
commission.
And the planning
Right.
commission would then look at it and say, this is reasonable, or
Okay.
no, we want to stick with what we had
Okay.
originally. That
Okay,
really
I'm
would be
going to
a
let
decision they can make.
Councilman Morris speak.
I just have just a
because-
clarification question. So Mr. Warnick mentioned that it came through his side yard and his backyard. Is that true that that they have backyards and side yards, or they just own the property that the house is on?
That's great. These are all common areas.
Okay, okay. That was my only question. Thanks.
Sir, can I
One,
ask a
two.
point of clarification, though? And it kind of goes back with the first comment, is that so this is on the ground and things change and, as development occurs, and that maybe this isn't an applicable amenity, not a usable amenity at this point. It's the same question I think that Tom brought up, is what if the volleyball is on the thing and you get to building it and the volleyball's not viable in that location, and so you want to build a basketball court over here? I mean, isn't this the same kind of a question that Tom just asked?
Sure.
Except this is done after the fact versus the pre-concept, because this is a concept plan
Yeah.
again, and things change, and so, and like I said, initially when that trail went to a pavilion, it made sense, but the pavilion was moved across with the pickleball, which makes even more sense as to where that's been placed. It kind of does create a path to nowhere, and so I would think it'd be the same question that Tom just asked. If something doesn't work in an area, can you move that amenity and it's something else to somewhere else? And I think that's.
Yeah, and the answer is yes, but there's a process for doing it.
Right, yeah, sure.
Okay,
My
And
question
we're not
was,
the process.
No.
eventually we will be. Okay, one more comment?
yeah, just,
Councilman Bloxham?
does a change in the amenity have any legal effect on the bond?
The answer is yes. The bond would adjust to whatever amenity is being bonded for.
Okay, so the bond can adjust to whatever the circumstances are. You don't have to start from scratch with the bond. Okay.
Okay. I think that pretty much sums it up. It sounds to me like there's a process that needs to go through. This is a public comment. We do have one more citizen that would like to comment, so go ahead and step up to the podium and state your name and your address again.
My name is Debbie Irwin, and I live next door to the Warnicks. Just moved here from Idaho. I was not informed at my purchase that this path was going to be 3 or 4 feet out my back door off my patio, which I guess I should have measured, but it doesn't leave us very much yard. And I can give you a whole list of objections that I have to the path being there. One of them is privacy. Our windows are all really low. You can see in. Just this week, we're having our sprinkler systems put in, and I haven't felt comfortable all week leaving my blinds open with workers out there, and which leaves my home kind of dark. And so I would kind of feel the same way if I had people walking through my backyard. I planned on, having family over for picnics and grandkids playing in the yard, and it leaves a path there that, for injury, for them to get injured on, and there's a lot of skateboarders going up and down our street too, and that's one more thing that I think they would find a path for, is this, riding up and down that path. And I just feel like the money should be used for an amenity that people in the neighborhood would like. So, just wanted to add those few comments, and I don't know what the cost of it is or anything like that, but I'm sure that the money could be used better elsewhere.
Well, thank you very much for your comment.
Mrs. Irwin, could you please give me your address?
Oh, it's 1090 South Graceway.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we appreciate the comments regarding this development, or, this pathway. I think as stated earlier, there's a process to go through. I mean, obviously, the previous body had approved it, and, we can't get in the habit of going back and changing things that have already been approved. So I don't think, this isn't the time for us to judge any of this, and certainly we just want you to know that should you want to take that type of action, either you or the developer would have to come through, and hopefully you guys can work something out. So, any other public comments at this time before we move on to our regularly scheduled meeting? Okay. All right, well, thank you. I'd now like to move on to our consent items. The first item is a third-party relocation agreement, and Terry Colburn, oh, there you are, silent in the back. I was going to say Terry Colburn will be presenting this item to us, so we appreciate that, and we'll hear what he has to say.
Thank you, Mayor. In the last council meeting, I brought before the council Resolution 2046, which in short was the resolution that allowed the mayor or the city manager to sign off on any simple easements or agreements or whatever up on the Highway 89 project. Remember that? There was a little bit of discussion, and I made the commitment to the council that if there were items that were appropriate for this body, I would bring them back for the council to rule on, okay? So tonight is one of those items. Bring before the council Resolution 49, a third-party relocation agreement between UDOT and Layton City for the relocation of water and sewer facilities in the Gordon Avenue extension portion of the US 89, Farmington, I-84, and Davis and Weber counties. Along Gordon Avenue, approximately 1700 East to 2100 East. UDOT is engaged in constructing the highway construction project identified as US 89, Farmington, I-84, and Davis and Weber counties. UDOT has awarded a contract for the project, and the design-build contractor will design and administer construction of the project. Layton City owns and maintains existing water and sewer facilities within the roadways at various locations within the scope of the project. UDOT's project construction necessitates relocating, adjusting, betterment, or protecting a portion of the city's water and sewer facilities in relation to the project. The city has requested betterments to the water system, consisting of the installation of an 8-inch water line identified as Solution S2215 in this agreement. The cost to the city for the betterment is $148,736.25. Staff recommends the council adopt Resolution 2049.
Council, do you have any questions regarding this item?
Terry, I just have one. So the betterment is on Solution 2215, the water line. That Solution 2218, is UDOT taking care of all that? There's no betterment on it or anything? Okay.
Any other questions, council? Okay, thank you,
you,
Mr.
Mayor.
Colburn. We'll move on to item B. This item will be presented by Gary Crane, our city attorney, and it's regarding it looks like a name change possibly.
Thank you, yes. You approved this agreement last meeting, telecommunications agreement. This is a reconsideration of that prior motion. Under a set of policies and procedures that were passed a long time ago by the council, generally you follow Robert's rules, but in reconsideration, Robert's rules say that you can reconsider in the same meeting if it's recommended by somebody who voted in favor of the motion. But we've added to that in Layton that if it comes to the council again in the next meeting where the minutes of that approval were actually given, that you can actually reconsider it. And so this is a simple one. They wrote back, they said, oops, put the wrong name. We didn't catch the name, but the name is Exo Communications, not NextLink, I think is what the original one showed. So Exo Communications is the proper indication. That's the only thing that's changed.
Any questions? Simple. Okay, that brings our consent items to a closure here, so I'll entertain a motion, council.
Madam Mayor, I make the motion that we approve the consent items. First one is Resolution 2049 for the third-party relocation agreement, Layton City and Utah Department of Transportation on the water line. And B is Resolution 2043, changing the name to Exo Communications.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We will go on to item number 6, which is our public hearing. And we have one item on our public hearing at this time. Mr. Tim Watkins will be presenting that item to us. It's in regards to a rezone request. So, Tim?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So revisiting the Lamano rezone, which came to you in the last meeting, and there was some discussion about assuring that some of the proposed amenities could be further detailed and captured in a development agreement, which has been drafted and presented to you. And to accompany or to proceed the rezone request from the RM1 PRUD, this being the former concept plan tied to that, and the new concept plan depicting the intended development under the new proposed zoning of mixed use. This is the proposed amenities to accompany the development, including a courtyard in the front area, pavilion, child play area in the space behind the mixed-use building, and then some form of recreational amenity in the detention area, and some, maybe a dog park element and some circulation markings with pavement color and sidewalks and so forth. Here's some of the specific development agreement language with a suggested modification highlighted in yellow. And you can see that the development shall be consistent with the concept plan shown in Exhibit B, and that it would include the construction of a front yard courtyard area, pedestrian circulation pathways, bowery and child play area, bike rack, dog park, and grass volleyball court or pickleball court, basketball half court or equivalent in the stormwater detention area. So this is some of the other language here. It reflects the timing, and it's tied more to when the development proceeds, that prior to the completion of the development, these amenities should be in place. And that would be after, no later than after 2 buildings have been completed and before the beginning of the 3rd or 32 of the total units. So with that, staff's recommendation is that the city council approve the resolution that would authorize this development agreement as well as the rezone request. I'm happy to respond to any questions or comments.
Okay, council, do you have any additional questions or response? I know we covered this in pretty good detail within our work meeting. However, this is the council meeting, so you're welcome to continue that discussion.
Tim, I have a question not about the development agreement, but what is this? This comes from the Assistant City Engineer, Shannon, talking about culinary water. It mentions that there is a 12-inch public culinary water line on the south side of Gentile. The developer and their engineer should be aware that this line is low pressure with approximately 48 psi due to Division of Drinking Water regulations. This low pressure may limit the type of development to maintain at least 40 psi without the use of individual pumps. What does that mean?
Well, I've been in, I believe there have been 2 or 3 development staff review meetings, and that there has been some different exploration of where and how the water pressure comes into the site. I'm sorry I can't speak to the technical engineering aspects of this, but my understanding is that they are fully aware of engineering standards and that there's different ways to achieve the water pressure required to support this many units. Maybe the applicant could recall more detail than I am able to.
So I guess my question, because we went from the 42 to the 53, I'm just wondering if that even even exacerbates the problem of the low water pressure,
I
or if
don't
that was
believe
part
it's
of
a-
this.
I don't believe it's a constraint for the units proposed, but if any constraint would limit the number of units if there was one, but my understanding is not a constraint. If they properly tie in and provide the water circulation, but I'm sorry, I don't have any more technical understanding of that particular comment.
So let me see if I understand what, so that would mean that if that constraint did happen, that they wouldn't be able to put as many units in, not that the units would go in and have low water pressure.
Correct. So they'd have to address or mitigate through an engineering solution. And those have been discussed at length with development staff, so.
Question, Tim, on the amenities again. The paragraph you have there, I'm fairly comfortable with it, but not totally. Whose decision will it be to decide what goes where and what it is?
So
And-
this would be.
Hey, Tim, if you can you talk more into the mic? 'Cause
Oh,
you're-
yes, I will.
It's really muffled, and I know that Kim's having a tough time here.
I apologize, thank you. So the way this would work is the language becomes code, effectively a regulation. And so keyword being consistent with, that would be zoning administrator determination that the plan and the text, that the graphic of the plan combined with the text suggests that it's either volleyball or something similar to a pickleball or basketball court, that the expectation is that that would reside in this area, in the detention area. So the flexibility is exactly what the specific programmed recreation element is, but the expectation is that it goes there, in the detention area, per the text. Here, as another example, child play area could mean that it's not just a sandbox, it might be something other than a sandbox, but it's for children. And this Bowery, would we hold them exactly to the placement of those two? I think as long as they're in that vicinity and that they meet the general spirit and intent of this, that's the kind of flexibility we.
What if they wanted to move it out by the volleyball area, for instance? Because that's not consistent with the wording in the general area, which I think they probably should have that flexibility. Because I can't see a lot of area in there for a pavilion and a playground area to make it worthwhile. I just soon see it go out by the volleyball area. But according to what you've got here, it has to be kind of in that area as specified on the plan.
So the flexibility could be increased if the council felt that
Well,
modification.
I think the
feel that it
prior comment here that we just dealt with from our citizens' comment really kind of sheds light on the entire topic here that, hey, you know, it needs to be in here, but can we modify it a little bit? And I think that's what Councilman Day's getting at, right?
I am asking for more flexibility, I guess. And that would be, from what your answer was, Chad would be the zoning administrator, and he would decide if that was appropriate or not.
Yeah, if it was consistent with it.
Yeah, I mean, let's let them do what they want to do. And they're going to put an amenity in there that's going to work. I personally would just throw out pickleball and basketball because you don't want to put cement in a detention area because it's just going to ruin it. It's not, I mean, if you want to, but I think that give them the ability to put in an amenity, and then Chad has the ability to say, yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, and there's different levels of
Sure.
drainage within the detention area that can,
Right.
cause or provide for the effective drainage. But yeah, we could certainly add flexibility to this to suggest that these amenities could be interchange throughout the potential open space areas.
Yeah, I'm looking for that kind of flexibility, not the kind you're talking about, Dave.
Yeah, no, I
Because
agree.
to just say, go ahead and put an amenity in is really not what we asked 2 weeks ago in our last meeting.
Yeah, we were.
So I think it should be specified, particularly what the amenities have to be, just not the placement. That should be flexible. Does that make sense?
It does, but you're suggesting that this flexibility of either one of these or the equivalent is not specific enough, or is that flexibility appropriate in addition to the distribution of where they land
I
in
just,
the open space?
I would rather see a pickleball court or a basketball court than a volleyball court, because I don't know. I'm not concerned particularly about that.
Okay.
But I can't see a Bowery and a little child's play in that small of an area, because I think the map is deceptive of the whole area, how small that area would be there.
Okay.
I think it would be better out in the detention basin or wherever. That's just my feeling.
Well, and I kind of agree with Tom, and I think it goes back to the prior citizens' comments too, is maybe we need to look at, are we making these, you've got the amenities, once you've got the project on the ground, these are marked concept, and things change. And as long as they're there, the amenities of some kind are there, does it really matter where they're at? Because as it's built out, there may be more appropriate places for the Bowery to be placed than what's on the concept plan, but they're still gonna have it, or, you know, like I said, looking back on the other one, I think that's, you know, we tied them into a certain thing that now that it's on the ground isn't really what probably needs to be there or where it needs to be. And, maybe should make it a little bit more flexible, like Tom's saying.
I think 2 weeks ago or whenever it was, when specifically Dawn and all of us kind of agreed that there should be amenities. It's just the placement that should be flexible, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Okay, I'm
Can
gonna
I
let,
recommend a change for you? Because it seems like there's kind of a consensus that there ought to be some flexibility there. So if you go to 4.1.1, says the development shall be consistent with the concept plans shown in Exhibit B, including, and it says the approximate area and location. I would take that out, including the open space with designed and programmed amenities areas as shown, including construction of a front yard, courtyard. And then at the very end, add a sentence, at the very end of that paragraph, add a sentence that says the area and location of the proposed amenities shall be determined by the zoning administrator. Give him the flexibility of being able to adjust those, as long as they're there. That's what you're saying, as long as they're there, but allow him to be able to look at the design and say, this is a good place for it, this is a good place for it. Exactly what you're saying.
I agree totally with that, Gary, but I would like it somehow in there that the courtyard has to be as outlined, because I think that's an important one for all of us. Just the courtyard part.
on the front, the
front
front's
courtyard.
Gentile.
Then
Yeah.
add where it says including the construction of front yard courtyard area, and you can put there at the location as indicated on the Exhibit B. So that particular item can be, we can frame it that way. We can put that wording in there. And I'll help Kim so she doesn't go nuts over what I just told you. But that would work.
Well, I was just going to say, whoever makes a motion, if we just say Gary takes care of it.
I second that.
That's a lot of trust, you guys. Anyway.
That's
yes.
all I'm looking for, is that the courtyard is there as drawn, and the flexibility, the amenities have to be there, but the location is flexible.
That we can do.
Perfect. You said it just right.
We can do it in 4.1.1, and that was an excellent motion.
That's what I was thinking.
So Tim, do we have, I remember working on this also with Don on the Planning Commission, talking about the detention basins and being able to use them for open space. But I don't remember us putting anything on them, in them, as far as what we're talking about here. Maybe, I mean, it mentions grass volleyball court. Okay, that makes sense. It's in the grass. A basketball court or pickleball court in an area that could be, that's for water detention. It just, we don't do that in our city parks.
Well, what we worked on in the planning commission was the amendments to the condo townhouse ordinance. And what we added some specific language that stated that there may be some, and this was with engineering's kind of response to the good questions asked by commissioners, that there may be some necessary drainage around such facilities to support and provide for sufficient drainage and to de-water, or I forget the exact language, but it's that idea of designating an area within the detention basin to be the lowest, wettest point, and then promote drainage away from an actual facility within the detention basin. So we thought through it pretty carefully, and I think it anticipated uses such as a patio or a play area, hardscape
Really?
or softscape.
Because I'm not sure we would be putting that pickleball courts in our detention basins in the parks. Just as a comment. I mean, I guess maybe what we talked about might work. You might look at it and go, yeah, it's not going to work. We're not going to be able to put anything there. But if you had the dog park and some other things over there in the detention basin, then you're not building something. It's just the thought of having something built, something nice, and laid out like they're talking about doing, and then having it potentially damaged with what that land use is for with the detention basin. That's my concern.
Well, it's thanks for the comment and the question. Not able to pull up the image instantly, but the image that corresponded with that text that we developed showed a green court with townhomes surrounding it, and an actual play area down in the detention area, a park, I should say, play set for children, and then kind of some patios to the sides and so on. So it was intended to be pretty flexible, and I think it really comes down to what's going to function properly to meet engineering standards for a detention basin. But it's my understanding that there can be a fair amount of uses programmed within them that can be compatible if designed and dewatered properly, drained properly.
And I would think this would be an ideal location for that concept. I don't care if it's a pickleball court. I don't care if it's a basketball court.
The ball certainly wouldn't escape as easily.
No.
Well, I think the
Yeah,
main
but
thing.
your flippers would get in the way when you tried to jump.
I think the main thing here also to consider is the fact that the location of this in relation to other construction that's going on and existing buildings, and I think these guys have done an excellent job on coming back with what we've asked, and I think there needs to be some consideration there so that they're able to market this thing. And who knows who the market buyers are, but certainly that's up to the Lamanos to decide. But I'd say I'm pretty pleased with what you've done so far. Okay, does anybody else want to comment on this? This is a public hearing. Does anybody in the audience want to comment? Okay, I am going to ask, since this is a live meeting, do we have any online comments whatsoever from tonight's meeting that we need to hear? None? Okay, very good. It looks like the applicant would like to come up and make a comment, so you're welcome to. This, like I said, this is a public hearing.
Zach Lamano. I just want to thank the city council for working with us and the mayor and everybody else in this room. We've been really trying to work hard with the city to come up with something that makes sense for this place and that fits the plan of just the general plan of the city. So just wanted to say that. I don't really have anything else to say. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, being that this is a public meeting, we need to bring the meeting to a close, so I could entertain a motion there, should anybody want to close the public hearing and also make a motion.
Yeah, make a motion, we close the meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that as far as you're gonna go?
Yep.
Okay, so make a note of that.
The public part of the meeting.
Just the public hearing portion. Okay, so
All right.
Councilman Thomas closed the public hearing portion of this meeting. I still need a motion regarding the Resolution 20-25 and Ordinance 20-25, so. Anybody care to make that motion with, that sounded like maybe a slight modification?
Okay, I'll do it.
Well, go ahead.
Do you want to do it?
No, I don't know how. Go ahead.
I'm not sure I do either. So I will say that I'm going to keep my P's and Q's to myself and not make my motion that I think really needs to be in there, because I don't think I have the support of my other council members. But I am going to make a motion that the city council adopt resolution 2050 approving the development agreement for Tuscany Villages with the changes to the owner's undertaking 4.1.1, something like this. That the amenities listed have to be built, but the area and location of the amenities may be decided by the zoning administrator, with the exception that the front courtyard location on Exhibit B must be done as Exhibit B.
Excellent.
And then do you want me to do the other one, or you doing them in one or two motions?
You can do them in both.
Okay, and then the second motion is that we adopt the ordinance 2025 approving the rezone request from RM1 PRUD to MU.
I second it.
Been moved and seconded, and since this is a public hearing item, I will take a roll call vote on this. So I'll start out with Councilman Waxham.
Aye.
Councilman Day.
Yes.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Yep.
Okay. There you have it. It's unanimous, and that brings the public hearing to a close. It also brings our agenda item council meetings to a close, with the exception of unfinished business. And I am going to exercise that the unfinished business that did not take place in our work meeting. So I'll go ahead and continue this meeting, even though it was a work meeting item. We are going to now bring back our Parks and Rec, or our planner for our parks, Joellen Grandy, to present some concepts or discussion regarding dog parks. Oh yeah, sorry. What?
Well, it's nice to be back. Not to belabor pickleball, but I think our next topic is kind of in a tip to the hat to the mascot for pickleball, where its namesake came from, with the pickleball was named after a dog named Pickles. So we're going to be talking about off-leash dog parks now. This has been a fun topic to be able to study and think about. Had the opportunity to travel to a number of different dog parks, off-leash dog parks in the Wasatch Front, as well as just a little bit of online studying to be able to understand what kind of off-leash dog parks we could have. And so today we'll be sharing what we learned, and then also helping just paint a picture of options, possibilities that we could do here. Again, it's no recommendations are being made tonight. It's just a number of ideas and concepts. So I'll take you through what we've learned, and then we'll open up to questions at the end. So as we learned about off-leash dog parks, we saw three different types being created. There's the shared use park area, there's the fenced off leash area, and then the open space trail corridor area. And these next slides will kind of help you understand what that means. So a shared use park area is basically a park that exists. It could be a neighborhood park. This one specifically is located in Salt Lake City. It's Lindsay Gardens. This is their park, and then in their park they have a section that is designated for off-leash dog use. It does not have any fencing. It just has typically there's a sign, and it just says you are entering an off-leash dog area. with the expectation of the owners is to be mindful of their dog and nearby them. These areas are usually located or designated where they're underutilized spaces in a park. You wouldn't necessarily want to have this next to a playground, for example. The second treatment is the fenced off-leash area. This is the most common that we saw, and typically that you probably are more familiar with. This one is in Draper. It's called Dayland Dog Park. It has a 6-foot tall perimeter fencing that goes around it, and then there are within that sections for small dogs, and then large dog areas. Green, there's a grass area and then a dirt area, but basically it's fenced in. There's a controlled entrance where they have to enter in with their dog to come into the park. And again, they're expected to watch over their dog and be supervising it. This third treatment is what we've titled as open space trail corridor areas. We saw 2 of these in our visits. Just going to highlight briefly the Parley's Historic Nature Park. There's a section. This is located down in Salt Lake City. Sugar House Park's over here, and this is I-215, and that's I-80. But this is a very, very large natural open space area, and within that park, there are trails that are specifically designated to allow dog owners to have their dogs off leash, and they are welcome to run and play in the water. So those are 3 different types of dog treatments that we saw, off-leash dog treatments. So the next question is circling back to our community here in Layton. We thought about, well, here's these 3 different types of off-leash dog treatments. What could we possibly do here? These are, on your left are some important bullet points to keep in mind. First of all is determining what type fits best. Secondly is understanding the area, that the acreage that a potential site could offer, and what that service area is in relation to that. How many people could it be accommodated with their dogs and still have a pleasant experience? There's also considerations that you need to keep in mind of the capital improvements and also the ongoing operational costs that would be year to year. And then also from a staff side, the maintenance commitment. And then, of course, there's a sweet spot about availability, timing, and then priorities with other things that are important to the city and that we need to be thinking about. And then, of course, public and political feedback, and that's why we're here, just to share with you thoughts as well. So here are some ideas that we looked at our city boundaries and thought about these 3 different types of treatments, and thought of some of the places that maybe these could be what an off-leash dog park and could be in Layton. So the blue represents that first example of shared use park areas, finding an existing park and then designating a certain area within that as off-leash. The second one is the dark gray circle. These are your fenced-in off-leash areas. We have 2 in that category. There's one we'll be talking about tonight, is the IHC Dog Park, potential opportunity, and then Power Corridor Park. And then this third one is those trail corridors, and then we have a list of where those are in relation to where they're located on the map as well. And this table is really important. This kind of helps you to understand each of those options of parks that could be an off-leash dog park scenario, and then taking an inventory on what the acres could be provided for those, and then the service area, either a 2-mile radius service area, or there are some that even reach up to a 5-mile service area. And then also, as we mentioned before, just considering your timing, your costs, and what your amenities could be that you could offer there as well. So today we just wanted to visit with you a little bit about an opportunity that's we're looking at and just evaluating, is the IHC Dog Park potential. This is, I'm sure you're familiar with the hospital that's on Layton Parkway. Wonderful facility right there. They have a section of their property that's underutilized and kind of buried there in the back. It's that triangle red piece. They're looking at potentially partnering with a 2-acre dog park area there. These other lines just help to kind of paint a picture of what their long-range plans are. The gray represents future parking spaces that are down the road when they're ready to do that. And this green space is an IHC community healing garden that's in planning stages right now. And then this blue represents a future building expansion. And a lot of this is very fluid. This is just kind of a concept for what their long-range plan is. So these next 3 slides are just different versions of that little triangle piece that we talked about, the 2 acres, keeping in mind that this would be a fenced off-leash area, off-leash dog park area. And so what we have here is, of course, there's a sidewalk space that comes in, and then there's the controlled entryway where you can enter in with your dog and then unleash it. And then there are 2 sections that are provided in this concept. The larger one is more for your communal dogs. Any size, shape can be there. The surfacing would be very native, simple. There's a line showing on a trail, but it's just the native soil. There's no additional improvements made to that. It's just very simple. And then this over here is a smaller section that is fenced and separate from this, where you could have just small dogs. And this number at the bottom is just a first blush at the cost estimate for that, but we're looking at about $262,000 to be able to create this space or this amenity.
Excuse, Joe?
Yes.
Is that 262 including the land?
No, that's just the improvements.
What? Okay, I need to read more.
Yes, and so also in your handout, I've provided a cost estimate that you can look at to be able to understand what that breakdown is. It is high number, but you're welcome to look through that and help you understand where those costs come from.
So,
There's
so what would be the land?
The land, at this point, there is no dollar associated with that. The IHC is willing to just work with us,
Partner with
them.
us?
Yeah, they're looking to partner. They've got.
Would they offer the land and we do the rest?
Yeah. That's basically what they're proposing.
And those are still questions that are being considered on both sides of the table. IHC is still questioning what they're willing to be able to put into this project, as well as us. So there's no commitments have been made at all yet. It's just an idea at this time and seeing if it's a good fit.
So basically, Joellen has done a great job on running the numbers and kind of coming up with the cost. I mean, the hospital, they have not done this. They just basically say, hey, we have some land here. We'd really like to utilize it. Since they've opened up their hospital, they do have a walking trail, and they've noticed that there's a lot of dogs using that walking trail. And they felt like that this particular area would be a good use for an off-leash because, they recognized, they actually had asked, is there a need in our city? And I know that over the course of the 5 or 6 years I've been here, it's been a continual ask on behalf of our citizens. And so this could be a potential area for one. And I recognize that Joellen's got some others that looks like earmarked as well, so. Yeah.
I'm super interested, and I know you've got some other things you want to talk about, but I guess my concern here is parking. Once we have something in Layton, it's going to be super popular because we haven't had anything.
Correct.
And would not want to have the hospital overrun with dogs and cars and right next to it, right?
Can you bring up that map? Yeah. That you had before that showed the gray and see the gray areas. Those are future parking areas. So there are multiple ones, but there's one right there by it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that's going to be super popular.
That's done by the
that would be IHC's responsibility.
Yes, and so again, I've got a couple more slides down the way that talk about some of those concerns that you just brought up, Council Member Morris, and they're good ones to keep in mind. But thank you. Let me just quickly go through the other two versions, and then we can move on. There's a lot more, and then we can at the very end talk about all these good questions that we have. So the second version, I won't belabor it too much, but again, this one now has a trail that goes around it. It's just a hard pack trail. Hard pack is very similar to road base. It's a 3/8 inch minus crushed gravel, soft path of some sort. And then there's a native space in the middle, still with no grass. With this one, there also is the inclusion of lighting. So that was something that IHC wanted to look into. So this second version, it's just bumping it up to $405,000. And then this third version is kind of like your all out, top of the line dog park, where you've got 3 different areas. Oh, I failed to mention on that second version, we also did add an additional parceled out section for dogs. So now you'll see that there are 3 different areas. There's still your small dog area. There's a grassed large dog area now, and then in the back there's that hard pack large dog area. Again, the costs come with, now we're improving with irrigation, sod, additional fencing, and also the trail is now an asphalt trail. So you can kind of just change your level of how much improvements you want to put in there. So now, just coming back to some of your questions you had, and they're really good ones. There's some concerns with this site. Also, while we're looking at all the fun things that you could do there, is definitely parking. This is kind of off in the far east side of the site. This is this parking lot that IHC at this time is willing to allow people to park there for using and accessing the dog park. And then again, as you know, there's future parking lot spaces there. Some concerns we do see is that most people may not want to walk that far.
Walk, how far is it? Like
from there to there?
100 yards?
Yeah, I don't know the exact distance, David.
To a mile.
If you got a dog, you got to walk that far.
Yeah, you'd hope so. But we're concerned that maybe some people might think that's too far away, and they may want to park here, or they may park in the church parking lot, or in the cul-de-sac, or even in this back area. So those are things to keep in mind, and we want to make sure that these citizens aren't being overwhelmed by that. The second one is just the acreage longevity. So you'll notice here the red dashed triangle is the 2-acre site. And however, IHC can't necessarily at this time commit to that 2 acres. They can only commit long-term to 1, which is that orange. This is just kind of pending what they eventually do here, so they can't necessarily commit to that long-term.
Well, they have a 10-year.
A 10-year,
minimum that they would commit to the 2 acres.
Yeah. And then the third thing is,
1 acre.
oh, I apologize.
Okay, go ahead.
That tells us we're not putting any money into it, amenity-wise.
No, the upper triangle, that would be permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah, the orange is permanent, but this
But I
part would
mean-
be
The red.
pending.
Right.
So the third thing is the service area and capacity, and this kind of goes back to what you were mentioning, Councilman Morris. As you can see, this little picture down here shows that for a 2-acre site, really its capacity is only able to offer a 2-mile radius service. So as you can see, Layton's a lot bigger than that, and so that is a concern, is that you may have this site be overwhelmed, because it would be our first, and so that's a concern, is can this site carry how many people really would potentially come there. And
Dogs, can you put in 2 acres?
that's a good question, Dave.
I mean, don't they, I know parking, they say you got to have this, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't, I wouldn't have a clue.
There's so many variables.
Yeah.
It's just like how many people.
2
visit,
acres is 2 acres.
Yeah.
But not everybody would go at the same time.
And then the last
I understand that.
Oh, sorry.
But I mean, it's, like what's your maximum,
These standards were developed by Salt Lake County, as they did a very extensive dog park study. And when we say that the service area is 2 miles, it indicates that if you have gaps outside of that, you're probably going to bring more dogs than you want to that little 2-acre park. I mean, if we had
Now you're saying little?
the 2 acres, if we had multiple 2-acre parks in our city and those service areas covered the entire city, that's the recommended
sure.
level.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious. If you have more parks, you're gonna have less dogs, you know.
And that's why the service area is as it is for this size of a park, the 2-mile radius. It just gives you an indication that based on their study and what they found as they looked over the region, this park, as a single entity, will not meet all of the needs that Layton probably has. But
We haven't met the needs of the people in any park. I mean, I'm not being confrontational.
No.
I'm just saying that, you know, we still have, you know, acres that we need to develop just for people that we haven't.
exactly,
You know.
and what we're telling you is that this is a starting point. This opportunity with IHC is a good starting point.
It is a great,
Especially if we
yeah.
have a strong partner that is willing to help
Sure.
us with this. But we don't want to present an idea that this is going to fix all of our,
right,
our,
yeah, well, never will.
our residents who have dogs' desires. So we're just trying to give you the information to help educate you as to what we've found. But we also have, you know, some other thoughts that we wanted to present this evening to give you a range of ideas to think about as we move forward. I apologize, Joella, please.
You can come up anytime you want, Dave. So with Dave's interlude, again, we stepped back and said, what else could we do? Let's go back to our menu of possibilities of what we could do, our opportunities. And we want to just talk briefly about 2 of those. First one is the Mutton Hollow Detention Basin. So this would be considered as a open space trail corridor area, and Mutton Hollow is located right here. It's actually owned by the county. It's 20 acres, and they're actually looking for. They've been interested in partnering with the city to perhaps let us use that site. So we'll share just a little bit more about that too. But then this other one that we just wanted to bring to your attention is the Power Corridor Park. It's located just west of Ellison Park. There's a section there that is just underutilized, as we've created some concept plans for that area, and we'll show you that too, and maybe that might be a space that you would want to have us explore a little bit more. So here's the Mutton Hollow Detention Basin. As I mentioned, it's 20 acres. Here, the idea would be to keep it just very native, natural. The trail system would be just soft path. The only thing necessarily that would need to be improved is there would need to be a parking lot established, because there is not, there's just a road that dead ends right there at this time. We also could introduce a restroom facility there. We have one available that could find a home there. And as far as the fencing, there's already a 6-foot tall fence that goes around the whole perimeter, so that's already done. But the whole idea was that this space could just be considered an open area, and if you wanted to have your dog there, potentially we could look into more if there's the possibility of letting this be an off-leash space. So to improve this space, it's also about $262,000, and that's for a 20-acre site. And the second one is the Power Corridor Park. I mentioned it's west of Ellison. This is just a very loose concept. We hope to have soccer fields down there in the future to help with overflow at Ellison. But there's this back corner space where there's power, the power poles are located, and we can't necessarily use it with some of the functions of the soccer field. So this space right here is approximately 5 acres. And so that's another area where we could explore. I yet to have a cost estimate for that, but we'd be willing to further explore that option if you would like. Oh, whoops, that's it. So, thank you. But again, I guess just going back to maybe this slide. Again, we're just here tonight to help just explore what potential opportunities could be, and to help you understand that there are a number of considerations and constraints that you need to keep in mind about, again, the service area, timing, costs, partnerships that you could potentially have. And so with that, I guess now if there's more questions, we'd be glad to answer those.
I just have one about the power corridor.
Yes.
So would we be leasing the space from Rocky Mountain Power?
Yeah, I believe that's how it is, Dave.
We have an existing long-term lease that allows us to use that property for recreational purposes. And this certainly falls within that. One thing that we would like to point out on both the Power Corridor Dog Park, because it is a 5-acre dog park, it services a much larger area. And so we begin to see that that service area covers much more of the city. The same is true with the Mutton Hollow Detention Basin. When we look at that opportunity, these are all expensive, but when we look at that opportunity, because of the size of the park and the nature of the development, we again receive a 5-mile service area instead of that smaller 2-mile service area.
So that kind of brings up a point with the Mutton Hollow one then, because that 5 acres, not that I don't want Kaysville to come join us, but isn't a good portion of that 5-mile radius Kaysville?
Sure.
And would it be something that they could jointly? I mean, you said that was county-owned property, right? That if you looked at something like that, that would service Kaysville too, as far as I know. They don't have, I'm not aware of an off-leash park. That would there be something that both cities could look at approaching the county for a shared space, because they're already in that radius to utilize that park, and why not get some dollars from there or something? Just a thought.
I think you're headed in the same direction we are, especially because the Davis County is already looking to partner with us for this. They have expressed an interest in not a dog park, but a walking trail in that area. And if we could approach the county and say, look, we support this, the one amenity we'd like to make is we would like to include dogs, so that, and again, we talk about this, and I always hear the term, we're building a dog park. This is a park for our residents who have dogs, and it's about 45%, 40 to 45. And so if we can work with the county and possibly with Kaysville as well, it might be a nice entry into this spectrum of recreation that we don't have yet.
And that's the 20 acres, right?
Correct.
So for 20 acres, according to today's figures, is 260 grand. I know they're just numbers, but that's what you put up there. And if we built it anywhere else, it's going to cost us the same for less acreage because of what we trade, what we get for free, all these kind of things. But 20 acres, and even if you only got 10 or 15 out of the deal because of other amenities and how you want to do it, makes a heck of a lot more sense. Even if, I don't want to say this out loud, even if we join with Kaysville, okay?
That kind of raises the hair on the back of your head, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I don't have a dog, but it would raise the hair.
All I can say is it ties into the history between the two cities, all the way around.
It could be it could be the Peace Park. You could, but even yeah, but even if it's not a dog, even if it doesn't end up being a dog park or used for dogs, just the running and the walking trail in that environment in that area would be incredible for residents.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I know that the county's anxious to kind of see if we would be willing to partner with them, and basically what they're really saying is have us take over the maintenance and facility of this place, but yet put it to good use. And quite honestly, a nice walking trail around that area would be the first thing we identified, but then as this whole concept evolved, then it was like, well, geez, here's another part of our void within our requests that could also be filled in one given area as well. So, it's like everything else. It just kind of evolves, but it requires all of us to kind of,
Tell them
be
to
on the
build
same
it,
page.
we'll mow it. No problem.
Well, the good thing about that one is it's native. It's natural grass. It's already in there.
Don't tell them.
Well, I can tell you that I've already had a few conversations, and possibly if we come up with the right plan here, that this could be an area, especially if we look at maybe doing a joint force with Kaysville, that the county would then possibly tap into maybe some TTAP money that could go to help facilitate this as well. So personally, I think it's a win-win all the way around. And quite honestly, I could see where both parks could be beneficial, especially, when you look at that IHC property too. Yeah, the 1 acre spot, it would be a long-term, but when you look at the type of developments that we're putting in that particular area of our city, we've already got the Case Creek crossing area, but then to the north of the parkway by the hospital, there'll be additional apartment well, I won't say apartments, but additional multi-housing proposed. I could see where there's a need for even just a smaller area. So again, the purpose of this meeting is just kind of help bring all of us up to speed and to educate us and to, give kudos to to Joellen and the Parks Department. Ryan, I know, was very much involved with this, and at least bringing it together to where we can have some solid information to kind of understand what direction we want to give these guys.
And it's important that, this is what we do, Parks and Recreation. These are fun things for us. But we also want to make sure that you're grounded in the pros and the cons of all of these ideas. And so as you're looking at the difference between Mutton Hollow and the IHC Dog Park, we're not only looking at a dollar value for an amount of area covered by the service area. We're looking at a different approach to dog parks. And so one is a very contained and managed space that a lot of dog owners feel very comfortable coming to. The other environment is larger and more open and has a different feel to it. Different people will enjoy that one a little more. It would be inappropriate of me not to also mention that with all of these developments, there is that portion of the city that just does not want or support dogs. They don't want to have dogs in their recreational areas. We've experienced that in one of our parks here in the city. That is something that we need to consider. As a council, you need to be aware of that. That with all of these things, there is a trade-off. We support some people's version of a recreation and a happy life, and for others, it may not fit their desires as well. So we feel that we needed to show you all of these things. We are working closely with IHC to see where their level of commitment is. They are proven to be an extremely good partner as we work through the community garden, strong partner for the city. And we will approach this dog park in the same way. As we work through these issues, we'll come back with you. There may be a time where if the dollar value of that development indicates we may be better off to put that money somewhere else, or just not have a dog park, we'll bring you the ideas and let you make those decisions. Again, any questions about what we've presented today? And thank you, Joellen. You know, her and Ryan have done the majority of this work and have done an excellent job.
I have another question. We have, I think, 3 parks in the city that allow dogs. Is it?
No, all of our neighborhood parks except for this park and.
We had the
Ellison.
experiment where we did have the 3, and then that was proved successful. We were taking care of our dogs. We were cleaning up after them. We were on the leash, and now we've expanded that.
Yes.
Any other issues with? I mean, you mentioned that some don't like dogs in the parks. Are we behaving ourselves, those that have dogs?
Woody Park is the one that, you know, you're all aware of. We have a couple people that just do not feel that we did the right thing there. Overall, the introduction of leashed dogs in our parks has been very positive. We do have an occasional individual that goes out into almost any park that you want to look at and lets their dog off. But I think for the most part, people do keep them under control. I walk with my dog at Sandridge. While I'm there, very rarely do I see someone have their dog off leash. And for the most part, they clean up after themselves. Our parks employees tell me very quickly if there's a problem with an individual not picking up after their dog. And so it's been a good thing, I think, for the city.
And I just have a question about the Mutton Hollow one. You said it's already fenced?
Yep.
So I'm trying to look at the map and figure this out. So is it east or west of Fairfield?
It is west of Fairfield.
West of Fairfield. I just
Oh.
want to go see it. I'm not sure I know the area, so.
It's actually locked because it's the county's property, so you won't be able to go into it.
You can see the area.
You'll be able, if you come down this road right here, you can walk about to this location, and then you'll be able to look in. But it doesn't give it justice. I mean, it's really,
It's a
it's
beautiful,
beautiful. Yeah.
That's called this road right here, when you see the sign. Yeah.
I don't know the name of the road. I'm sorry.
I think Pheasant View is where that nursing home or assisted living is
Yes.
on, right?
Yeah.
I know where that
So,
is.
so it's just a
It's just
little
for-
bit west of
West
there.
of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you'll go past the church there and then.
It's,
Okay.
it's west of Fairfield and
come to the
south of
south.
Rosewood. So.
Oh, okay.
And Ms. Fitzpatrick or any other council member, if you would like to visit any of these sites, especially this one, we would make sure that we could get access for you to come down and take a look at it. Just let us know when you'd like to go.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well,
I don't own a dog, but I might get one now. No. Like everybody else through quarantine.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks.
you guys, for staying late. I appreciate that, so that we can kind of cover the topic and help give you guidance there. Okay, that wraps up our meeting. Just one last comment that I will make, just in case any of you know this or are aware or want to be aware of it, but unfortunately with this COVID thing, I mean, all of us have said that we didn't really know anybody that's had it, and then as now it's progressed, I mean, certainly all of us, I think, now know somebody. But it's with the sorrow heart that I mentioned tonight that unfortunately we had a gentleman in our community who was a great teacher, a mentor for a lot of kids, an excellent golfer. He had 5 hole-in-ones. Actually passed away due to COVID, and that is Mr. James Arbin. So I know some of us had him as a teacher, and it's unfortunate that that's happened, but my condolences to the family there as well. So anyway, council, thank you again for staying late, and I'll entertain a motion to dismiss.
So moved.
Okay. Thank you very much.